The castle is quiet tonight, wrapped in silence except for the distant hum of wind against stone. The torches in the hallway flicker softly, casting long shadows that stretch across cold floors polished by centuries of footsteps. Settle in for a moment. Take a breath. Because tonight, we're stepping into a world that looks glamorous from the outside. Gleaming crowns, velvet gowns, banquet halls filled with music, but hides a life of pressure, danger, and exhausting expectations behind every polished surface. This is the life of a medieval queen, and despite the gold, the jewels, and the titles, it was far from a dream. Imagine a life where your choices are rarely your own, where every smile you offer is studied by a dozen advisors, and every silence is interpreted by 100 noble families waiting to decide whether you're an ally, a threat, or a pawn. The moment you become queen, your world stops belonging to you. Every move you make becomes a matter of state. Every gesture becomes a message, and every word becomes something that can shift alliances or ignite whispers in dark corridors. Your chambers might look luxurious, but the comfort is an illusion. The stone walls chill even the warmest blanket. The windows let in more wind than sunlight, and the decorations around you, gold, tapestries, painted shields, are reminders of duties you cannot refuse. You don't wake up thinking about what you want to do. You wake up thinking about who needs to be pleased, what political tension must be managed, and what decision may ripple through the entire kingdom. People imagine queens sitting on thrones, adored and respected. The truth is closer to walking a tightrope between powerful church leaders, unpredictable nobles, ambitious relatives, and a king who may be either your closest ally or your greatest challenge. You are expected to be intelligent but not threatening, gentle but not weak, loyal but not naive. A single misstep, an unintended comment, a misunderstood expression can shift the atmosphere of the court. And then there's the silence, the heavy, consuming silence of long nights spent alone in a chamber where even your thoughts feel monitored. It's the loneliness of knowing that friendships are rare, trust is dangerous, and every person around you may be serving someone else's interests. Being queen means being watched, being judged, and being held responsible for matters you never asked for and cannot escape. Tonight, we're peeling back the royal curtain and stepping into that world, its rituals, its pressures, its hidden struggles. The world of the medieval queen, where the crown shines brightly, but the life beneath it is weighed down by expectations few could endure. Settle in. The truth behind the throne is far more complicated than the fairy tales ever admitted. The morning begins long before the sun rises. A faint glow creeps through the narrow slits of your chamber windows, barely enough to reveal the cold stone walls around you. You open your eyes, not to comfort, not to warmth, but to the steady realization that today is no longer your own. The crown has been placed upon your head, and from this moment forward, every breath, gesture, and decision will be watched by dozens of eyes trained to interpret your behavior. Becoming queen is less like stepping into a life of privilege and more like stepping onto a stage where the performance never ends. Servants move quietly through your chamber, whispering so softly that the sound seems like part of the cold air. They bring water, cloth, layers of formal attire, and instructions handed down from advisors who have already begun their day. They remind you of rituals scheduled for the morning, meetings awaiting your presence, and the list of people who expect your attention. Their words mix with the lingering fog of sleep, leaving you momentarily overwhelmed. You are already behind on duties you never asked for. The crown did not come with a guide. You weren't given time to understand the magnitude of your new role. Whether your rise to queenship came through marriage, succession, or political necessity, it arrives with expectations as heavy as the gold on your brow. You must be gracious, but not passive, intelligent, but not intimidating, diplomatic, but not overly independent. You must wear the face of serenity even when your mind is unsettled. And above all, you must represent stability even when you feel none. As you rise, the weight of your garments reminds you that nothing about this day will be natural. Layer after layer is arranged on your body, each one crafted not for comfort, but for symbolism. Every thread has meaning, every color signals allegiance, and every accessory carries political implication. Even your hair is arranged in a way that communicates your status. To the outside world, you appear elegant. Inside, you feel the stiffness, the heaviness, and the quiet suffocation that comes with being dressed in expectation rather than choice. Once you leave your chamber, the corridors echo with footsteps, muted voices, and the low hum of activity. From the guards positioned at each doorway to the attendants waiting in the hall, everyone bows as you pass. At first glance, the gesture seems respectful, but it is also a reminder that your life is no longer private. Every person you encounter represents a family, a faction, or a cluster of political ties. Their loyalty is conditional. Their admiration is selective. Their smiles are polite, but their eyes measure everything: your posture, your pace, your silence, your tone. Your first task of the day is to attend a meeting with the council. Even though the king presides over most decisions, your presence is required. You must listen, observe, and occasionally offer an opinion crafted to be useful but not disruptive. Inside the council chamber, long wooden tables are covered with scrolls, maps, and wax tablets stacked in a state of organized tension. Advisors greet you with bows that feel practiced, calculated, and precise. They rise not because they respect you as a person, but because the crown demands it. Throughout the meeting, you watch the flow of discussions. Topics shift rapidly, from taxes to border tensions to diplomatic letters awaiting response. Every sentence spoken by the council is weighed, debated, and analyzed. Your role is to contribute carefully, choosing words that support stability without aligning too strongly with any one faction. A misplaced phrase could fuel whispers that spread throughout the court by midday. You sit straight, hands folded, expression composed, even when your mind longs for a moment of clarity away from scrutiny. When the meeting ends, the advisors bow again, already whispering among themselves as they leave the chamber. Their words fade into the cold hallways as you move toward your next obligation, a ceremonial appearance in the courtyard. Dozens of nobles gather there, each donning elegant clothing that conceals ambition beneath its folds. They greet you warmly, but you feel the tension beneath their courtesy. They observe you closely, searching for signs of preference or hesitation. They study the people you speak to, the people you avoid, and the order in which you acknowledge them. Your smile becomes a diplomatic tool, Your posture becomes a message. Even your pauses become part of the performance. Someone will always misinterpret something, no matter how careful you are. A brief glance at one noblewoman becomes a rumor about favoritism. A delayed greeting to a particular family becomes a political insult. In the world of medieval courts, tiny gestures carry enormous weight. As you leave the gathering, your attendants follow closely, adjusting your cloak, carrying documents, and offering reminders of the schedule ahead. Their presence is not intrusive, it is necessary. You are rarely alone, and even in solitude, you are never unwatched. The castle feels enormous, yet claustrophobic. Every hallway branches into another chamber, another duty, another expectation. The corridors echo with the history of rulers before you, some beloved, some criticized, some feared, and some forgotten. You don't know which category you will fall into, but you do know that the process begins now. When you arrive at your private solar, the sunlight streaming through the narrow windows creates a brief moment of stillness. These chambers are meant to be your personal space, but even here, the demands continue. Letters await your response, invitations require approval, requests from nobles need acknowledgement, gifts from allied families must be evaluated for meaning. Everything carries political significance, and nothing is ever simple. You sit at a carved wooden table, looking at the collection of wax-sealed letters before you. Each seal represents intertwined obligations, foreign alliances to maintain, families to reassure, and rumors that must be addressed before they twist into something dangerous. You break the first seal, skim the neatly written lines, and prepare a response that conveys diplomacy, caution, and just enough warmth to avoid misinterpretation. Hours pass in the repetition of reading, responding, and thinking several steps ahead. Even small decisions feel heavy. You're learning quickly that queenship is not about ruling, it's about navigating. You navigate politics, personalities, expectations, and dangers hidden behind pleasantries, and you navigate them all while maintaining an image of serenity and strength. By afternoon, your attendants guide you to the Great Hall, where a meal is served for visiting nobles. The atmosphere hums with conversations layered with meaning. Every seat arrangement is intentional. Every toast is symbolic. Every introduction between guests hints at alliances meant to be encouraged or discouraged. Your role is to host with grace, answer questions with diplomacy, and avoid giving anyone the impression that you favor one group over another. You speak politely, listen carefully, and smile just enough to remain approachable without appearing overly familiar. The meal lasts far longer than comfort would allow. When it finally ends, your day is still far from over. There are lessons with court scholars on the latest political developments, quiet conversations with trusted attendants, and preparation for the next ceremony. Every hour becomes a lesson in restraint and performance, revealing that queenship is a demanding, unrelenting occupation that requires constant awareness. As evening arrives, you return to your private chambers where the day's weight settles heavily on your shoulders. You allow yourself a long breath, finally free from the court's eyes, at least briefly. You feel tired in a way that is deeper than physical exhaustion. The responsibility, the scrutiny, and the steady hum of pressure have woven themselves into your thoughts. You understand now that being queen is not simply a role. It is a state of constant vigilance where every moment carries consequence. You sit by the window, watching the sun disappear behind the castle walls, and the final realization settles quietly. The day you become queen is not a day of celebration. It is the day your life becomes a balancing act between expectation, duty, and survival. And the world around you will never again be simple. The morning air hangs cold and still when you wake, but before you can even stretch or gather your thoughts, attendants are already moving inside your chamber. Their presence is quiet, practiced, and efficient, but there is no mistaking the underlying urgency. Today is not about you. Today is about the kingdom's expectations, its alliances, and the political machinery that surrounds your newly secured title. And nothing reflects that reality more clearly than the marriage that placed the crown on your head. You did not choose the match. No medieval queen did, not truly. Your marriage was decided long before you stepped into the court, negotiated by men who measured kingdoms like pieces on a board. Treaties, trade routes, peace agreements, military reinforcement, these were the forces that shaped your future, not affection or compatibility. Your life was designed to fill a political gap, to soothe tensions between rival lands, or to strengthen a dynasty's claim. And now that the union is complete, the consequences unfold around you. You rise from the bed uneasy, reminded that even the warmth beside you, the quiet breathing in the adjoining chamber, belongs more to the crown than to your personal life. The king's attendants have already taken him for morning council preparations. Whether he regards you with fondness or indifference is uncertain, because the marriage itself was not built for partnership. It was built for strategy. Servants prepare you for the day, layering fabrics and adjusting your hair with practiced hands. They work silently, but you sense the questions lingering just beneath the surface. How well do the two of you get along? Will the king listen to your counsel? Will the union produce heirs? Their glances are subtle, their expressions carefully controlled, but the unspoken concerns are everywhere. In a world where a queen's value is often measured by the stability her marriage provides, even strangers in your chamber carry quiet expectations. Once dressed, you walk through the corridors with your attendants trailing behind. The castle feels colder today, as if the stones themselves know the weight of responsibility that comes with a marriage forged by diplomacy. Every step you take echoes through the aisles, mixing with the soft hum of people preparing for the day's announcements. Your first task is to join the king in the audience chamber. The walk there is long, lined with carved wooden doors and tapestries depicting battles, saints, and royal triumphs. These images remind everyone, including you, that strength lies not in love, but in alliances, agreements, and carefully maintained power. When you enter the room, nobles bow, courtiers rise, and the king glances toward you with an expression you try to read. Is it approval? Curiosity? Indifference? The truth is, you don't know him well enough to decipher it. You've spoken to him in formal settings, exchanged rehearsed vows with him, shared ceremonial dinners, and survived the elaborate rituals that marked your joining, but none of those moments revealed much about the man himself. The marriage exists first as an institution, not a relationship. You take your seat beside him, a symbolic gesture that communicates unity to everyone watching. But the space between you, though narrow, feels wider than any river. The day's petitions begin. Nobles step forward, addressing concerns about land disputes, border skirmishes, taxation, and trade. Their words flow around you like a river of information you must somehow navigate while maintaining a poised demeanor. Throughout these proceedings, the king speaks decisively, sometimes thoughtfully, and occasionally with sudden irritation. He is fluent in the language of power, confident in asserting his authority. You listen closely, trying to understand the rhythm of his decisions, the logic behind his temperament, and the priorities that guide him. These details matter because as queen, your role is to support and influence decisions without appearing to overstep. Too much involvement invites suspicion. Too little suggests weakness or disinterest. At the same time, you're expected to embody unity, an unspoken model of harmony that reinforces the idea that the royal marriage strengthens the kingdom. Even when the king's tone grows sharp or his judgments seem hasty, your expression remains serene. You must navigate the balance between appearing loyal and maintaining your own perspective, all while avoiding any action that could be interpreted as political overreach. After the audience session, envoys from neighboring lands request a private meeting. They congratulate you both on the union, but beneath the polished compliments lies curiosity and caution. They want to know whether this marriage truly secures peace or merely delays tensions. They want to see how you interact with the king. They want to measure the strength of this new alliance. And they want to test your political instincts. You answer with calm precision, choosing words that reinforce stability. Every sentence is weighed carefully in your mind before it leaves your lips. You must sound diplomatic, but not overly assertive, wise, but not challenging, warm enough to suggest peace, but not so relaxed that they misread your intentions. Your voice must reflect the kingdom's interests more than your own. The meeting ends with polite farewells, but the tension beneath the surface remains. When you leave the chamber, your attendants guide you to the next event, a ceremonial walk through the gardens. This display, orchestrated by advisors, is meant to signal unity and tranquility to both the court and the public. As you step outside, the air carries the scent of wet soil and crushed herbs. The gardens are beautiful, but the walk feels like a performance, another scene staged to show a harmonious marriage. The king walks beside you, and though your steps are aligned, your thoughts feel distant. You exchange small remarks about the state of the realm, the success of the ceremony, and the duties waiting ahead. His tone is polite, controlled, and not entirely warm. You respond with the same level of formality. This is a partnership in form, not yet in substance. As you continue down the path, you catch murmurs from courtiers trailing behind you. They observe your posture, your expressions, and the subtle pauses in conversation. They take mental notes, analyzing your compatibility as though it were an open ledger. Even a slightly misplaced step could become the subject of speculation by evening. Later, you return inside for a midday meal held in a smaller hall reserved for nobles of high rank. Seating is arranged with meticulous care. Families hoping to influence the king's decisions sit closer. Those hoping to learn more about your temperament sit directly across from you. Everyone listens to your interactions with an intensity that feels exhausting. Every laugh, hesitation, or gesture becomes the foundation for their theories and whispers. Throughout the afternoon, your duties continue. Lessons with scholars, guidance from senior ladies of the court, and more introductions to nobles fill the hours. Each interaction reveals the complicated reality of your marriage. You are expected to support the king, uphold alliances, strengthen diplomatic relations, and secure the dynasty through your union, all without the benefit of personal connection or trust. By the time evening approaches, you feel the weight of the day settling across your shoulders like a heavy cloak. You return to your chamber, greeted by quiet candlelight and the faint scent of lavender from the herbs placed near your bed. For a brief moment, the room feels like a sanctuary, a place where the expectations fade enough for you to breathe. But even here, the reality remains. Your marriage was crafted for politics, not companionship. You lie down, staring at the ceiling carved centuries before you existed, and realize that despite the crown, the gowns, and the ceremonies, your life is not your own. You are a symbol, an alliance, a diplomatic bridge. And as sleep slowly approaches, you understand the quiet truth. Being queen means being bound to a marriage that was never built for you, but built for the world around you. The morning begins with soft knocks on your chamber door, followed by the quiet shuffle of attendants entering with trays, clothing, and schedules. Light streams through the narrow window in pale streaks, revealing particles of dust suspended in the cold air. Before you even sit up, before you speak a word, your day has already been planned by others. That is the first reminder of the life you now lead. Queenship is not a private existence. It is a public performance, lived under constant scrutiny from dawn until long after dusk. As you rise, the attendants begin dressing you, adjusting fabric with careful hands. They speak politely, but their eyes track every expression, every sign of hesitation or fatigue. Their job depends on anticipating your needs, but they also report to the noble households who placed them in the castle. Their observations travel quietly through corridors, becoming whispers that shape the court's perception of who you are. In a place where reputation is currency, even the people who lace your gown become unwitting messengers. Walking through the corridor, you feel the familiar sensation of eyes following you. Guards straighten their posture when you pass. Ladies of the court offer small, precise curtsies, and the few servants who dare glance up do so briefly before focusing again on their tasks. The air feels thick with silent evaluation. They observe your pace. Are you confident or hesitant? They note your posture. Is it poised or tense? They analyze your expression, calm or troubled. Everyone is measuring something because for them, your demeanor reflects the stability of the entire kingdom. Your first obligation is a short appearance in the Great Hall, where nobles gather for morning matters. Some arrive early, eager to be seen near you, to catch your eye, or to offer a subtle greeting that binds them to your good graces. Others stand farther back, pretending disinterest while secretly assessing how you carry yourself. They watch the angle of your chin, the steadiness of your voice, the warmth, or lack of it, in your reply to their greetings. Every detail is judged. You quickly learn that silence can be as revealing as speech. One noblewoman approaches with a warm smile, her eyes bright with curiosity. She asks about your rest, your plans for the morning, the progress of your adjustment to palace life. Her tone is pleasant, almost affectionate, But beneath it lies a deeper purpose. She is not simply concerned. She is gathering information. How tired you seem, how prepared you appear, and how vulnerable you might be. Her family has political interests woven deeply into your husband's reign, and understanding your emotions helps them anticipate shifts in power. As you walk through the hall, the sound of soft gossip follows you like a shadow. You catch fragments of conversation, your name spoken in hushed tones, a comment on your attire, speculation about your role in recent decisions. No matter how composed you feel, someone will always see something to criticize. And if they cannot criticize, they will invent meaning where none exists. Rumors grow in palace halls as easily as ivy on old stones. After leaving the great hall, you proceed toward the council chamber, but a senior lady of the court intercepts you. She asks if you might spare a moment to attend a gathering of noble women in the solar. Such gatherings seem harmless, even pleasant, a space for polite conversation and companionship. But you know better. These meetings are where alliances are forged, and subtle power dynamics are shaped. Refusing would be impolite. Accepting means navigating a maze of intentions. You join them, offering a polite smile as you sit amidst embroidered cushions and trays of warm drink. Conversations begin softly, weather, festivities, patterns on your gown. A harmless opening, carefully designed to lull you into comfort. But slowly, the topics shift. A noblewoman asks whether you've offered your opinion in recent council matters. Another wonders aloud how the king treats your suggestions. You can feel the tension beneath their questions, threads of curiosity woven with caution. They want to know your influence, your confidence, and your alignment, but they want you to answer without revealing too much. You respond with moderate, polished lines, showing awareness but not overreach. Your words are carefully neutral, designed to maintain balance without inviting scrutiny. The women nod, exchange glances, and return to lighter topics. But you see the conclusions forming behind their eyes. The conversation ends politely, but as you leave, you know that a dozen interpretations of your answers will spread across the castle before nightfall. The next part of your day is spent with the king at a formal audience, where visiting nobles from other regions present concerns. You sit beside him, offering poised silence while he listens. Everyone in the room studies the two of you. They look for signs of unity, tension, or influence. Some want to know if the king values your counsel. Others hope to discover whether you might be persuaded by their interests. The room is a stage, and every gesture between you and the king becomes a message to an unseen audience. At one point, a disagreement arises between two nobles over land rights. Their voices rise, and the atmosphere thickens. The king leans forward, and for a moment he glances at you as if seeking your reaction, not because he needs your opinion, but because others are watching closely. You keep your expression calm, offering only a subtle, measured nod. It is enough to show unity, but not enough for anyone to claim your involvement. In the medieval court, presence alone carries meaning, even in silence. After the audience, you walk through the castle gardens with two attendants at your side. The air is crisp, filled with the scent of damp leaves and early blossoms. The quiet should feel soothing, but even here, you are aware of eyes lingering on you. A group of young nobles stand under a stone archway, pretending to enjoy the flowers, but their glances reveal their true purpose. They observe how you interact with the attendants, how you carry yourself when not under direct ceremonial pressure, and whether your private demeanor matches your public one. You pause near a fountain, watching the water ripple as a breeze passes. For a moment, you let your shoulders relax, but even that small gesture is noted by those nearby. You realize quickly that comfort is a luxury you must practice sparingly. The world around you never stops evaluating, categorizing, and interpreting your behavior. Privacy exists only in small moments carved between obligations. You return indoors for a private lesson with the royal educator, where you receive updates on political developments. The session feels like an extension of the scrutiny you face daily. Even the scholar observes how quickly you absorb information, measuring your intellect and predicting how it may influence the court's balance of power. Knowledge in this world is not simply power, it is potential risk. Later in the afternoon, a servant delivers a small carved box sent from a noble family, hoping to gain your favor. Inside, you find a piece of jewelry, delicate and beautiful, accompanied by a short note expressing admiration for your grace and wisdom. The gesture appears kind, but you know better. Accepting it creates an unspoken alliance. Rejecting it creates insult. And the worst option is misunderstanding its intention. Such gifts are messages, disguised as generosity. By evening, you attend a banquet filled with conversation, candlelight, and music. You sit beside the king, surrounded by nobles, servants, entertainers, and observers. Everyone watches, everyone listens. Every toast, every smile, and every conversational choice becomes another piece of the puzzle that others use to define your role in the kingdom. Even food becomes political. Refusing a dish prepared by a particular household can be seen as a slight. Throughout the banquet, you maintain grace, even when exhaustion threatens to slip through your posture. You speak when necessary, remain silent when expected, and display just enough warmth to avoid appearing cold. But you never fully relax. You cannot. The court thrives on interpretations, and being a medieval queen means living with the knowledge that nothing you do goes unnoticed. When the hall finally empties and you return to your chambers, the silence feels heavy but welcome. The candles flicker softly, casting warm patterns across the stone walls. For a few quiet moments, you can breathe without fear of judgment. But even then, your mind races, replaying the day's interactions and predicting how they might be interpreted by others. You lie down, letting the weight of the day settle around you. And as sleep slowly approaches, one truth settles in your mind with remarkable clarity. In the medieval world, a queen did not simply live. She was watched, judged, interpreted. She existed under a lens that magnified her smallest missteps. And no matter how poised she appeared, the scrutiny never truly ended. The morning begins with quiet footsteps outside your chamber door and the hushed murmurs of attendants preparing for another long day. But today carries a heavier weight than most. Today, the whispers in the corridor are not about diplomacy, ceremonies, or the concerns of nobles. They are about you, your duty, your responsibility, and the expectation that overshadows nearly every aspect of your life as queen, the expectation to secure the future of the dynasty. You wake aware of it even before your eyes open. The pressure to produce an heir is a shadow that follows you everywhere you go. It waits for you in council meetings, hides behind polite smiles at banquets, and lingers in the conversations of noble families who discuss your future as though it were a public matter, because in their world, it is. Your attendants move around you, arranging fabrics, smoothing your hair, and preparing your morning garments with the same focus they bring every day. But today, their movements feel more deliberate. Their glances are quieter, their expressions softened by the knowledge that their queen is under a kind of scrutiny that no one could envy. They do not speak of it aloud, but you can sense that even they wonder how soon the kingdom will see its next heir. You walk through the corridors with the familiar weight of expectation pressing heavily against your chest. People bow as you pass, but their eyes drift toward your waist or linger on your hands, searching for signs that might reveal the kingdom's future before you choose to announce it. In their minds, your body and its ability to produce children are not private matters. They are political assets, and the stability of the realm hangs on them. Today's schedule begins with a meeting in the Queen's solar, where court physicians and senior ladies gather to discuss health and routines. But the coded language fools no one. The conversation is about ensuring that you are doing everything required to increase the chance of an heir. You are offered herbal mixtures, recommendations for rest, and schedules for when the royal marriage should be prioritized. You sit still, your posture straight, your expression composed, but inside, the weight of their advice crushes the air from your lungs. None of these people know you well. None understand your hopes, your fears, or your private emotions. And yet, they speak confidently about your body, as though they have the right to dissect every detail. Their concern is not for your comfort, but for the continuation of the dynasty. You listen politely, answer carefully, and try not to reveal the unease curling in your stomach. Once the meeting ends, you walk toward the chapel for the morning service. The hallways are colder than usual, and the echo of your footsteps sounds sharper against the stone floors. You enter the dimly lit chapel, where candles flicker along the walls, and the scent of incense hangs heavy in the air. You kneel, offering quiet thoughts, but even in this sacred space, you feel the lingering pressure of expectation. The church, too, has opinions about queens and heirs. They often remind you that your duty is not merely political, but spiritual, ordained by the structure of the world itself. After prayers, you step outside and join the king for a short walk through the courtyard. Fresh air settles around you, but even the crisp breeze does little to calm your mind. The king speaks of council matters, border disputes, and trade routes, but occasionally his tone shifts, subtly hinting at the same subject everyone else has touched today. He does not say it directly. He is too controlled, too aware of decorum, but the implication rises between each sentence. He needs an heir. The nobles need an heir, and the kingdom expects one. Your marriage is observed even more closely during this time. Every interaction with the king is noticed. Every smile, every pause in conversation, every moment walking beside him becomes a detail that others use to predict whether an heir might soon be on the horizon. The pressure tightens around you, invisible but unrelenting. At midday, a feast is held in honor of visiting nobles from a neighboring realm. The room is filled with the hum of conversation, clinking goblets, and the warm scent of roasting herbs. You take your place beside the king, sitting straight as dozens of eyes fall upon you. The noblewoman across from you offers a polite smile, followed by a casually phrased question about the future of the royal line. Her words are soft, but the message beneath them is sharp. Others follow, weaving the same conversation through different angles. They ask about your health. They ask if you've been sleeping well. They ask if you enjoy your time in the gardens. But every question is simply another attempt to extract information about the kingdom's most anticipated topic. Beneath the music and the chatter, you feel the suffocating truth. Your private life is not private. After the meal, you retreat briefly to your personal solar for a moment of solitude. The chamber is quiet, sunlight falling across the woven rugs and carved furniture. You sit near the window, feeling the warmth on your hands, and finally allow yourself to exhale. Here, without eyes watching, without polite smiles masking intrusive curiosity, you can acknowledge the pressure pressing inward from all sides. You think of the queens who came before you. Some were praised endlessly for producing heirs quickly. Others were judged harshly when fate did not grant them the kingdom's desired future. History remembers these women not for their character, their intelligence, or their contributions, but for whether they fulfilled the role demanded of them. And you understand now, with a clarity you wish you could ignore, that you too will be measured by the same standard. But your moment of stillness ends when an attendant knocks softly on the door, announcing another round of visitors. This time, senior council members who wish to offer guidance about upcoming ceremonial duties. You nod, rise, and prepare yourself once again. You slip back into the composed posture expected of a queen. The council meeting feels predictable. Layered beneath their advice about ceremonies and travel schedules are subtle warnings about maintaining unity in the kingdom. They speak of succession in professional tones, but the meaning remains constant. Everything depends on you fulfilling your primary duty. Their voices blend into a single chorus of polite pressure, and you maintain your poise even as your heartbeat grows heavy. As evening approaches, you attend a small gathering with the king and his closest advisors. The candlelight casts warm shadows across their faces as they discuss the kingdom's future. Even when the conversation shifts toward matters of peace treaties and seasonal festivals, it eventually circles back to one topic: the stability of the royal line. You sit beside the king, listening, aware of how each person in the room measures your reactions. When the gathering ends, you slip away to your chambers once more. The castle grows quieter, the corridors darker as night settles across the kingdom. You sit alone near the flickering candle on your bedside table, letting your thoughts unravel into the silence. You know that this expectation will never disappear. The pressure to secure the dynasty will follow you through every ceremony, every feast, every quiet moment. You lie down, feeling the weight of the crown even when it isn't on your head. And in this quiet moment, you understand why the role of a medieval queen was far from glamorous. Your life is bound to a duty that offers no rest, no privacy, and no escape. The kingdom sees you not as a person, but as a vessel for its future. And every day you wake, that truth meets you before your eyes even open. The day begins with the distant ringing of bells, echoing through the stone corridors, like a reminder that peace is never truly guaranteed in a medieval court. You open your eyes to the faint light slipping past heavy curtains, but before you can gather your thoughts, the soft murmur of attendants enters your chamber. They move quietly, placing warm water near the wash basin, and laying out garments selected for today's council session. Clothing chosen not for comfort, but for political meaning. You rise slowly, still thinking of yesterday's demands, but today brings something different. It is not a ceremony, not a feast, and not a public gathering. Today is about facing the hidden battlefield of palace politics, a place far more dangerous than any open conflict. The castle seems peaceful from a distance, but beneath its carved arches and painted ceilings lies constant tension. It hides under polite greetings, behind closed doors, and in the smiles of people who bow deeply but watch you with sharp eyes. Your attendants drape you in layered fabrics, adjusting belts and pins with care. They speak softly as they work, but their glances reveal that they know today's council will be crowded with nobles eager to sway decisions. Everyone has a motive, everyone has an agenda, and everyone assumes the queen can influence something, anything that will benefit them. Even if it is not true, perception alone is enough to place you at the center of competing interests. The corridor feels colder than usual as you walk toward the council chamber. Guards step aside and bow, but their eyes follow you, aware that today's discussions may shape alliances or ignite rivalries. You do not slow your pace, even though you feel the tension surrounding you. The palace holds its breath every time council members gather. Too many opinions, too many ambitions, and too many people who believe they deserve more than they are given. As you enter the chamber, nobles rise from their seats in a practiced gesture of respect. Heavy wooden tables fill the center of the room, covered with scrolls, maps, and stacks of parchment. The walls display banners representing the noble families who support the crown, though some of these families are more loyal in appearance than in action. You take your seat beside the king, and immediately the atmosphere shifts. Whispers quiet, advisors stiffen. Every gaze shifts toward the two thrones at the head of the room. The meeting begins with discussions about trade agreements and border tensions, but the tone is sharpened by suspicion. One advisor subtly questions another's loyalty. A nobleman argues for increased privileges in a region that does not belong to his family. Another voices concern about taxation policies, though everyone knows he is pushing for benefits that serve his personal interests. It becomes clear that each speaker is less focused on national matters and more focused on securing advantage for their own house. Your presence complicates everything. For some nobles, you represent an opportunity to influence the king indirectly. For others, you represent a threat, someone who might support their rivals. Eyes shift toward you whenever the king hesitates or shows a moment of thoughtful silence. The room is constantly calculating, constantly guessing how much your voice might matter. Near the center of the chamber, two advisors begin to argue more openly. Their voices rise, cracking the illusion of decorum. One insists on increasing taxes in a region known for supporting a rival noble house. The other pushes for lowering taxes to gain favor ahead of seasonal gatherings. Their disagreement is not about finance. It is about territory, influence, and long-standing grudges, wrapped in formal language. You listen carefully, understanding that every tension in this room has roots far deeper than what is spoken aloud. At one point, a noblewoman, known for her sharp political insight, approaches you quietly during a recess. She leans slightly closer, speaking in a gentle tone that hides the calculation behind her eyes. She mentions a rumor circulating about a potential alliance between two rival families and asks if you have heard anything. You reply carefully, offering a neutral response that reveals nothing. She smiles, but her eyes narrow briefly before she excuses herself. You know she will return to her circle with interpretations of your tone, your expression, and even your pauses. As the council resumes, the king announces plans for a seasonal tour through the kingdom, prompting a surge of discussion. Nobles argue about which regions should host the royal party. Some argue for fairness, others push for attention in areas where their own influence is strongest. You watch the exchanges unfold like waves crashing against one another. Every noble speaks with conviction, but their intentions remain tangled in self-interest. At one point, an advisor suggests that you personally visit certain noble estates to strengthen ties. The king glances at you, evaluating your reaction. You maintain composure, though internally you feel a flicker of unease. A queen traveling without the king is rarely a simple gesture. It can imply favoritism, raise suspicions, or spark rumors. Still, refusing outright would draw even more attention. You respond with a careful, measured comment about your willingness to support unity throughout the realm. The nobles nod politely, each interpreting your words through the lens of their own ambitions. When the council finally ends, you leave the chamber with a controlled expression, but inside your thoughts swirl. You can feel the weight of all those eyes, all those calculations, lingering like a heaviness around your shoulders. Politics in the palace does not end when the meeting ends. It stretches into every hallway, every conversation, and every quiet moment behind closed doors. As you walk toward the Queen's solar, a small group of ladies-in-waiting approaches with cheerful greetings. They ask about the council, offering sympathetic smiles and subtle questions. Their words seem friendly, but each one carries a secondary purpose. Lady Eleanor, known for her diplomatic finesse, gently asks if the king relied on your advice today. Her tone is light, but her eyes are sharp, measuring every detail of your reply. Lady Rowan comments on the tension between two advisors, pretending curiosity while searching for clues about who might gain favor. Even their laughter carries intention. You answer them with practiced grace. Enough warmth to maintain goodwill, but not enough to share anything genuinely valuable. And you notice how quickly their attention sharpens when your expression changes, even slightly. Court life has taught them to read people like manuscripts, looking for hidden meaning in every shift of posture or tone. And as queen, you are the most closely read manuscript of all. Later, you move to the garden terrace for a brief moment of fresh air. The breeze carries the scent of damp soil and crushed leaves, but the peacefulness is an illusion. A pair of noble cousins stand near the stone railing, pretending admiration for the view while whispering to one another. Their glances toward you break the illusion of innocence. You know they are discussing the council meeting, likely picking apart your every expression, every silence, and every subtle gesture from earlier. You stand by a fountain for a moment, watching the water ripple. You try to study your thoughts, but even here, the palace's political web stretches around you. Trust is a currency that very few possess. Every word you speak today will be retold tomorrow, reshaped through countless interpretations. Your moment of quiet ends when your steward approaches with an update. The king requests your presence for a private discussion about the diplomatic message received earlier in the day. You follow him back through the hallways, aware that even this request will spark whispers among those who saw you summoned. When you enter the king's private chamber, he gestures for you to sit beside him. He holds a letter, sealed with the crest of a distant realm. The message explains shifting tensions near a shared border. The king speaks calmly, explaining the situation, but the underlying message is clear. The kingdom may face increased pressure, and every alliance, formal or personal, will matter. Your marriage, your role, your presence, and your diplomacy all factor into how the court interprets upcoming events. He asks your thoughts, and you offer them carefully. You can never be too bold or too silent. Both extremes invite scrutiny. Your observations must be measured, insightful, but not threatening to his authority. He listens, nods, and occasionally glances at you with an expression you cannot fully read. It is not affection, nor is it distrust. It is something more complex, awareness of your political value, and perhaps uncertainty about how much influence you may one day hold. When the discussion ends, you return to your chambers, feeling the weight of the palace's invisible battlefield still pressing against your mind. You change out of your ceremonial gown, allowing attendants to unfasten pins and loosen stiff fabrics. As you sit near the warm glow of a candle, your thoughts return to the countless strategies unfolding around you. Every noble, every advisor, every servant, even those who smile kindly, play a role in this ongoing contest for advantage. You lie down finally, exhausted. The day's events replay behind your eyelids. The arguments in the council chamber, the subtle questions from noblewomen, the hovering suspicion in the corridors, the king's measured tone, and the ever-present knowledge that nothing you say or do goes unnoticed. You understand now, with greater clarity than ever before, that the palace is not just a place of power. It is a battlefield without swords, where alliances shift like shadows, and every interaction holds hidden meaning. Being queen means navigating this world with precision, restraint, and relentless awareness. And there is no armor for the kind of battles fought here. The sun has barely risen when you sense a faint shift in the castle's atmosphere, something subtle but unmistakable. It's in the way the attendants speak more carefully, the way the guards straighten their posture, the way the noblewomen seem to glide through the corridors with practiced smiles that hide sharpened curiosity. Today, you will face the court's most delicate balancing act, navigating rival queens, noblewomen, and the quiet but deadly world of competing court factions. You step into the corridor, your gown trailing softly behind you, and immediately feel a dozen eyes analyze your presence. Every noblewoman in this castle carries her own ambitions, her own alliances, and her own hidden grudges. Some want influence. Some want proximity to the king. Some want their families to rise through your favor, and a few, the most dangerous of all, desire power that rivals your own. Your first task is to attend a morning gathering in the upper solar, where the most influential noblewomen spend hours weaving political threads through seemingly harmless conversation. When you enter, they rise with polite smiles, bowing slightly in your direction. The mood is cordial, but beneath the warmth you sense tension. Women speak in pleasant tones, but their eyes study everything: your gown, your expression, your posture, and the servants who accompany you. Lady Isolde, known for her sharp intellect, greets you first. Her tone is light, but her words are carefully chosen. She comments on your presence at yesterday's council meeting, praising your composure, but you hear the undertone. She wants to know what you observed, what opinions you formed, and whether any advisor seemed close to earning your confidence. Before you can answer, Lady Rosalind steps forward with a silk-smooth smile. She compliments the color of your attire, but her gaze drifts to your attendants, silently noting who among them might be newest or easiest to influence. Each woman around you carries motivations wrapped in pleasantries, and your responses must reflect grace without revealing anything substantial. The conversation flows, seemingly harmless. They discuss a festival planned for next month, the arrival of an envoy, the decorations for the hall during winter. But each topic contains layers. When they discuss the festival, they are also discussing which noble house will receive favor. When they mention envoys, they test your political insight. When they speak of decorations, they are really creating opportunities to judge alliances. You participate with calm judgment, offering remarks that show awareness without committing yourself. You listen closely to their phrasing, their pauses, their glances toward one another. They attempt to draw you into their individual circles, but aligning too closely with any single faction would immediately provoke the rest. You must stand in the center, accessible but never captive to anyone's agenda. The conversation shifts suddenly when Lady Marjorie arrives late, entering with the kind of confident grace that demands attention. She greets you delicately, but her expression carries a subtle challenge. She belongs to a powerful noble house, one that has often clashed with others in this room. Her arrival shifts the balance. Eyes dart between her and you, waiting for the slightest sign that you prefer her company over theirs. She speaks to you about the queen of a neighboring kingdom, a woman known for her political influence. Marjorie praises that queen's strategic marriages, hinting, without ever saying so directly, that you too might benefit from stronger alliances with particular families. The message is clear. She wants your support. She wants to be closer to the throne. The tension in the room sharpens. You respond with gentle neutrality, offering polite admiration for the foreign queen, but nothing more. Marjorie's smile tightens at the edges, but she cannot challenge you directly. Not here, not yet. After the gathering, you walk through the courtyard toward the great hall. The air is cool, carrying the earthy scent of early morning. A few young noblewomen linger near a column, whispering behind raised hands. When they see you, they bow quickly, but something in their posture reveals nervous calculation. You recognize them as relatives of Lady Rosalind, part of a faction that subtly opposes Lady Marjorie's family. You know that even your smallest interactions today might shift the balance between the two groups. In the Great Hall, a reception is held for the arrival of a foreign delegation. The room fills quickly, tables lined with inked scrolls, tapestries, and polished silver. Here, the factions become less subtle. You watch as noble women gather in clusters, hiding their disputes behind polite laughter. The foreign guests look impressed by the grandeur of the court, unaware of the invisible threads of rivalry woven through every corner. As queen, you must move through the hall with measured grace, greeting guests without lingering too long with any one household. You greet Lady Beatrice, who offers a respectful bow, but you notice the slight tilt of her chin, revealing her skepticism. Her family once hoped the king would marry her cousin. They still hold quiet resentment toward your very existence. Her smile is pleasant, polite, completely controlled, and entirely false. A table across the hall becomes the center of attention when two noblewomen begin a polite but tense argument over seating arrangements. Their words are smooth, but their eyes flash with rivalry. Their families have been at odds for years, and today they compete for your favor during this reception. If you choose to sit near one, the other will interpret it as a slight. You solve the conflict with elegance, choosing a neutral seat that keeps both parties balanced. A subtle victory, but an important one. In this court, managing egos is a constant necessity. Later in the day, as you return to your chambers to rest briefly, Lady Isolde intercepts you in the corridor. She requests a private conversation, a request that carries more weight than her gentle tone implies. She enters your solar with graceful composure and closes the door behind her. She speaks openly about recent tensions in the court, not out of loyalty, but because warning you strengthens her own position. She mentions whispers of noble families seeking to influence the king's next decisions, and hints that some believe the queen herself may be persuaded to support their agendas. Her message is subtle. Your neutrality is valuable, but neutrality is also fragile. Everyone is watching to see if you lean toward any faction. You thank her for her honesty, though you know her motives are layered. She smiles, bows, and leaves you with more questions than answers. During the afternoon, a small feast is held in the West Hall. The king sits at your side, speaking with advisors, but your attention is drawn to the shifting patterns of noblewomen as they move through the room. Some linger near the king, hoping to be noticed. Some sit further back, silently observing the dynamics. Some attempt to draw you into their conversations, offering praise that feels carefully rehearsed. At one point, Lady Marjorie takes a seat closer to the king than usual. Her voice is soft, her smile perfectly angled, but the move is bold, an intentional signal to her rivals. Lady Rosalind's expression tightens. Lady Beatrice pretends not to notice, but her fingers tap rhythmically against the goblet in her hand. You remain composed, offering a diplomatic comment that subtly redirects the attention back to the purpose of the feast, rather than individual agendas. But the message has already been delivered. Marjorie's positioning becomes the topic of whispered discussion across the hall. As evening approaches, you withdraw to your private chamber, where candlelight warms the darkening room. Only here, away from the court's unblinking eyes, do you truly exhale. You realize how many layers of rivalry you navigated today, how many half-truths, calculated smiles, and careful gestures filled each hour. Nothing was simple, nothing was casual. Every interaction carried political weight. You sit near the window, watching the last sliver of daylight fade behind the castle walls, and you understand with greater clarity that queenship is not only about diplomacy or ceremony. It is about surviving among people who smile with perfect grace while pulling invisible strings behind your back. It is about recognizing alliances woven in whispers, threats hidden in compliments, and strategies masked by courtesy. You close your eyes for a moment, absorbing the lesson the court taught you today. Your true challenges may not come from kings or armies, but from the noblewomen seated closest to your throne. The morning sun spills weakly through narrow, leaded windows, cutting across the cold stone floors of the royal chambers. As a medieval queen, the day begins not with personal freedom, but with duty, expectation, and scrutiny. You rise, fully aware that every movement, gesture, and word is being observed by servants, courtiers, visiting dignitaries, and sometimes even the king himself. The opulence surrounding you, the tapestries, the gilded furniture, and the polished silver, feels less like luxury and more like the trappings of constant surveillance. Every jewel, every embroidered gown, every carefully styled lock of hair is part of a performance, a ritual that must be maintained to preserve status, favor, and influence. Today, your schedule is dictated by an unrelenting series of obligations. Breakfast is a formal affair, a display of etiquette where even the placement of utensils matters. Courtiers watch your behavior for signs of intelligence, grace, or weakness. A misstep, a crumb misplaced, a word spoken out of turn can spark whispers that ripple through the castle like wildfire. Gossip, after all, is one of the most potent weapons in the medieval court, capable of undermining alliances, influencing the king, or even threatening your personal safety. By mid-morning, the queen is expected to engage in matters of diplomacy. Ambassadors arrive, presenting petitions or tributes, each hoping to flatter and manipulate. You must listen carefully, nod in acknowledgement, and respond with measured words that convey authority without overstepping bounds. Misjudgment in diplomacy can lead to political setbacks, strained alliances, or outright humiliation. The Queen's role is to act as a mediator, symbol, and sometimes negotiator, all while navigating a landscape of intricate social hierarchies that shift with the whims of those around her. Education and literacy are both tools and burdens. A medieval queen who can read, write, and correspond intelligently gains influence, but also bears the constant expectation of intellectual performance. Letters from distant territories, reports from governors, and instructions from advisors arrive daily, demanding attention and judgment. Misinterpreting a message, overlooking a detail, or showing a lack of knowledge can be disastrous. Knowledge is power, but in the medieval court, it is also a trap, a source of scrutiny where errors are magnified and reputations are fragile. Meals are another complex ordeal. Dining is public, formal, and carefully choreographed. You eat under observation, expected to display refinement, restraint, and composure. Food is abundant, yet its preparation is laden with danger. Poisoning is a persistent threat, and every bite may be scrutinized. The queen must maintain constant awareness, balancing appetite, etiquette, and caution, a precarious act of survival disguised as daily life. Wardrobe is both armor and prison. Elaborate gowns and corsets restrict movement, making basic tasks cumbersome and exhausting. Heavy fabrics, intricate fastenings, and layers of adornment serve symbolic purposes, signaling wealth, status, and allegiance, but they exact a physical toll. Sitting, walking, or even resting requires effort and attention. The queen's appearance is a constant calculation of image versus practicality, and failure to maintain decorum can have far-reaching social consequences. The queen's private life is a paradox of public exposure and isolation. Marriages are rarely chosen. They are political arrangements designed to consolidate power, secure alliances, and produce heirs. Love, desire, and personal preference often play little role. Intimacy is carefully managed, sometimes orchestrated, and frequently performed under pressure. Conception and childbirth are both expected and fraught with risk. A queen's value is often judged by fertility, and failure to produce heirs can invite scorn, manipulation, or even exile. Court intrigue is relentless. Nobles, courtiers, and advisors all maneuver for influence, often using the queen as a pawn or tool. Letters, whispers, and secret meetings create an ever-shifting network of alliances and rivalries. The queen must navigate this labyrinth with precision, balancing favor, suspicion, and loyalty. Misjudgment can lead to public embarrassment, loss of influence, or even threats to life. Survival requires constant vigilance, political savvy, and an unyielding sense of awareness. Daily routines include prayer, ritual, and ceremonial obligations. Religious observances reinforce public piety and moral authority, but also consume time and energy. The queen must demonstrate devotion, humility, and grace while navigating the symbolic weight of faith and tradition. Every action, even private contemplation, is framed by the expectations of a society that scrutinizes women in power more intensely than men. Managing the household is another layer of responsibility. Staff, servants, and attendants depend on the queen's oversight, yet their loyalty is never guaranteed. Disputes among attendants, rumors of disloyalty, and minor failures cascade into larger problems if mishandled. The queen balances authority with diplomacy, ensuring that the machinery of daily life runs smoothly while protecting her own position. The palace is a complex organism, and the queen is both its heart and its nervous system, central yet constantly under pressure. Even moments of leisure are constrained. Games, music, or reading must be conducted with composure and attention to propriety. Conversation is monitored for both content and delivery. Humor must be carefully calibrated. Satire or criticism, even in jest, can be interpreted as insult or rebellion. The queen exists in a world where autonomy is curtailed, where even small freedoms are negotiated within the tight constraints of visibility, expectation, and tradition. Relationships with the king are central yet complicated. Marriage is a political contract first and foremost, and the dynamics of affection, power, and alliance are delicate. The queen's influence can be considerable, yet it is often contingent on the king's favor, temper, and perception. Political counsel, emotional support, and strategic negotiation are all part of the queen's role, requiring intelligence, tact, and patience under pressure. Missteps can have immediate and lasting consequences. Childbirth is both a duty and a danger. Producing heirs is the queen's primary expectation, but pregnancy carries significant risk of illness, injury, or death. Labor is intensely monitored, and the queen's body becomes a site of both hope and scrutiny. Children are assets, symbols, and political tools, and the queen's ability to conceive and raise them affects both her standing and the stability of the realm. Every birth is a high-stakes event, blending personal pain with public expectation. Evenings are filled with counsel, correspondence, and ceremonial duties. Guests may arrive unexpectedly, and matters of state continue into the night. The Queen's influence is exercised subtly, often behind the scenes, navigating both loyalty and suspicion. Every interaction, greeting, conversation, negotiation is a calculated maneuver within a web of political intrigue and social expectation. Sleep offers little reprieve. Chambers are watched, attendants remain nearby, and security is maintained. Dreams are fleeting, often interrupted by concern for children, alliances, or messages from distant lands. Rest is a luxury, vigilance a necessity. Precarious position and constant scrutiny ensure that even private moments are tempered by duty, responsibility, and awareness. The Queen's life is defined by expectation, constraint, and responsibility. Beauty, status, and influence are accompanied by relentless scrutiny, danger, and sacrifice. Daily life is a performance, a balancing act between personal survival and political necessity. Every gesture, word, and decision carries weight, shaping not only the Queen's reputation, but the fate of the kingdom itself. Power exists, but it comes with constant cost, reminding us that being a medieval queen was far from enviable. It was a life of enduring pressure, navigating peril, and performing perfection under unyielding observation. The morning light filters through tall, narrow windows, illuminating the grand hall where courtiers have already gathered. As a medieval queen, your day begins not in solitude, but amid whispers, glances, and the unrelenting presence of those who watch your every move. Court intrigue is a constant, invisible pressure, shaping your actions, alliances, and decisions. In this world, power is not measured solely by rank or title. It is measured by influence, perception, and the ability to navigate the labyrinthine politics of the royal household. Every gesture, every word, and even silence can be weaponized by those seeking advantage. The Queen's role in court intrigue is multifaceted. You are simultaneously observer, participant, and target. Courtiers, advisors, and nobles all operate with hidden agendas, each seeking to curry favor, undermine rivals, or manipulate outcomes for personal gain. Alliances are fluid and often fragile, shifting with rumor, opportunity, or perception. The Queen must constantly assess intentions, read subtle cues, and respond with tact. Misreading an ally or misinterpreting a comment can have consequences that ripple across the palace, potentially destabilizing both your position and the wider political landscape. Meetings and audiences are high-stakes arenas. Ambassadors, nobles, and petitioners approach with carefully prepared presentations, each designed to impress, manipulate, or flatter. You must maintain composure, convey authority, and respond with measured wisdom. Decisions made in these moments, whether accepting a gift, granting a favor, or offering counsel, carry weight far beyond the immediate interaction. The court is a stage where the Queen's judgment is scrutinized, debated, and remembered, and where mistakes can be amplified into scandal. Whispers are the currency of the court. Behind closed doors, in hallways, and even during ceremonial gatherings, rumors circulate. Courtiers exaggerate, omit, or fabricate details to influence perception, shift allegiances, or provoke conflict. The queen must navigate these currents carefully, recognizing both truth and deception. Listening, observing, and interpreting becomes a form of survival, as does deploying subtle countermeasures to protect reputation and position. Prehistoric power struggles pale in comparison to the sophistication and subtlety of court intrigue in a medieval royal household. Marriage politics continue to dominate the queen's existence. Even if the king is nearby, he is only one actor in a network of alliances, expectations, and pressures. The queen's relationships with other nobles, particularly those with claims to influence, wealth, or military power, require careful cultivation. Favor must be extended selectively, slight avoided meticulously, and loyalty carefully measured. Misjudging intent or underestimating ambition can lead to betrayal, loss of influence, or even danger. Every social interaction is a test of perception, strategy, and endurance. Patience becomes a survival tool. Courtiers test limits, provoke responses, and probe weaknesses. The queen must maintain composure, conceal frustration, and act deliberately. A sharp word, a perceived insult, or a mismanaged disagreement can escalate into political fallout. Every encounter is a negotiation, balancing assertiveness with diplomacy, intellect with tact, and perception with action. The queen's ability to endure subtle pressures, navigate hidden agendas, and maintain control defines her effectiveness and safety within the court. Symbolism and ritual underpin intrigue. The queen's gestures, attire, seating, and participation in ceremonies convey messages understood by those attuned to the nuances of court life. A seemingly minor misstep, sitting before an elder, wearing the wrong color, or engaging in an inappropriate conversation, can be interpreted as a challenge, insult, or weakness. Prehistoric battles may have relied on brute force, but medieval court battles were waged through symbolism, perception, and meticulous attention to detail. Conflict resolution is a delicate art. Disputes among nobles, servants, or even factions within the household often require subtle mediation. The queen must weigh social hierarchy, loyalty, and political consequence before intervening. Decisions are rarely straightforward. They must account for both immediate outcomes and long-term ramifications. Mismanagement of conflict can result in loss of favor, diminished influence, or destabilization of alliances. Every choice carries risk, and the queen must balance justice, prudence, and personal safety. Espionage and surveillance are pervasive. Informants, spies, and loyalists feed information to key figures, often operating under the radar. The queen must discern the reliability of information, identify deception, and act accordingly. Trust is a rare commodity, and knowledge is power. Prehistoric survival depended on observation and instinct, but in the medieval court, intelligence and awareness are weapons that shape influence and survival as much as strength or beauty. Even social gatherings are battlegrounds. Feasts, dances, and tournaments are not merely entertainment. They are opportunities for observation, influence, and strategic maneuvering. Conversations are layered with meaning. Gestures communicate intention, and subtle interactions can alter alliances. The queen must navigate these events with a combination of grace, awareness, and strategic intent, understanding that every appearance is part of an ongoing negotiation of power. Every decision is scrutinized. Advisors monitor counsel, rivals analyze demeanor, and allies assess reliability. Public and private actions are recorded mentally, remembered, and shared. Prehistoric humans had to survive immediate threats, but medieval queens operate under the constant evaluation of an entire social ecosystem. Even personal preferences, hobbies, or leisure activities are weighed for their political significance. The queen's autonomy is constrained, and independence is tempered by the omnipresent lens of courtly observation. Maintaining alliances is continuous work. Gifts, favors, and attention are deployed strategically to cultivate support, mitigate opposition, and reinforce loyalty. Prehistoric tribes relied on immediate cooperation, but medieval courts require sustained effort, planning, and foresight. Relationships are fragile, and the queen must balance generosity with prudence, perception with intent. Missteps can alter the balance of power, elevate rivals, or erode influence. Political maneuvering extends to family and marriage networks. Relationships with siblings, children, and extended family members carry both advantage and risk. The queen must assess loyalty, ambition, and perception within her own household as carefully as among courtiers. Family politics are intertwined with state politics, making every interaction a calculated act of influence, negotiation, or diplomacy. Miscalculation can result in scandal, marginalization, or direct threat. The queen's reputation is her greatest asset and her most vulnerable target. Public perception, rumor, and the king's favor shape her influence and authority. Protecting this reputation requires vigilance, strategic action, and awareness of every social and political interaction. Prehistoric warriors relied on strength, skill, and cohesion, but the medieval queen navigates a battlefield of perception, subtlety, and intelligence. Survival depends as much on judgment and strategy as on status or rank. By evening, the queen has survived another day of subtle battles. The corridors echo with quiet conversations, whispers of ambition, and the soft shuffle of attendants. Every victory, every carefully navigated conversation, and every observed interaction strengthens understanding, knowledge, and strategic positioning. Prehistoric survival depended on physical endurance and combat skill. Medieval survival adds the weight of social and political acuity. The queen must continually adapt, assess, and maneuver to maintain influence, safety, and legacy. As night descends, reflection consolidates the day's lessons. The queen reviews alliances, evaluates rivalries, and plans subtle interventions. Knowledge gained through observation, interaction, and careful analysis informs the strategies for the days to come. Court intrigue is relentless, and the queen's survival, influence, and legacy depend on the ability to integrate every observation, maneuver, and interaction into a cohesive approach to power and safety. The morning light spills into the chamber, cutting across the ornate tapestries and polished wooden furniture, yet it cannot soften the weight that presses on your shoulders. As a medieval queen, producing an heir is not merely an expectation, it is the central purpose around which much of your existence revolves. Every thought, every action, every moment of your daily life is influenced, shaped, or constrained by the unrelenting pressure to conceive, give birth, and secure the future of the dynasty. The king, advisors, courtiers, and even distant allies all weigh silently on this responsibility, each expecting success, each ready to measure failure. Fertility is monitored, discussed, and often manipulated with little regard for personal autonomy. Herbal remedies, rituals, and prescribed diets are suggested, administered, and enforced, each with promises of increasing chances of conception. The queen must adhere to these recommendations, no matter how uncomfortable, inconvenient, or exhausting they may be. Prehistoric survival relied on immediate skill and physical strength. Medieval queens must survive societal and bodily pressures that are less tangible but no less relentless. Even the act of intimacy is structured, governed by expectation rather than desire. The king's attentions, formalized in schedules and obligations, are sometimes mechanical, sometimes reluctant, always observed. Failure to conceive is never viewed as mutual. It is almost always the queen's burden, her personal worth tied to the unseen cycles of her body. Prehistoric humans faced dangers in the open, but the medieval queen's battlefield is internal, intimate, and constantly scrutinized. Medical knowledge is limited, and every pregnancy carries substantial risk. Childbirth is a dangerous endeavor. Maternal mortality rates are high, and complications are frequent. Queens are attended by midwives, sometimes herbalists, sometimes healers whose methods are as unpredictable as the outcomes. The queen's body becomes a site of potential triumph and constant threat, a place where survival is never guaranteed and expectation never ceases. Each birth is a gamble, a high-stakes moment where the future of the realm and the stability of her position hang in the balance. The social consequences of fertility are immense. Producing a male heir secures the throne, ensures continuity, and stabilizes alliances. Failure to conceive, or producing daughters when sons are expected, can lead to whispers, diminished influence, and even political maneuvering against the queen herself. Every pregnancy, every miscarriage, and every birth is monitored, discussed, and evaluated, transforming private experience into public consequence. The queen must navigate these pressures with both resilience and grace, understanding that personal agency is secondary to dynastic need. Courtly expectation extends beyond conception. Queens are observed for their demeanor, health, and composure, especially during pregnancy. Swelling limbs, nausea, or exhaustion are not merely discomforts, they are signals to observers about the queen's capacity, strength, and suitability. Gossip travels swiftly, judgments form rapidly, and social standing can shift in response to perceived weakness or vigor. The queen must manage her public image, even when her body is subject to forces beyond her control, blending personal endurance with performance. The pressure to produce heirs influences daily routine and activity. Physical exertion, diet, rest, and even emotional state are carefully monitored, either by the queen herself or by attendants and advisors. Activities once simple, walking in the gardens, meeting visitors, or attending ceremonies, become calculations, balancing safety, stamina, and opportunity. Prehistoric survival relied on immediate decision-making. Medieval queens must negotiate a complex web of physical, emotional, and social expectations over long periods, often without relief. Failure has consequences beyond the personal. Political rivals, ambitious courtiers, or dissatisfied factions may exploit perceived inability to produce an heir, plotting to undermine influence or replace the queen with a more productive figure. Social pressure compounds personal stress, creating a climate where every miscarriage, delay, or complication is amplified into potential scandal. The queen's survival, emotional, social, and political, is intertwined with her perceived fertility, making the stakes extraordinarily high. Pregnancy itself is taxing. Fatigue, nausea, and physical discomfort limit movement and capacity for daily duties. The queen must continue to perform public obligations, participate in ceremonies, and maintain composure despite the growing physical demands. Every misstep can invite criticism, while every demonstration of vigor is carefully noted, celebrated, or weaponized in political calculations. Prehistoric survival is immediate. Medieval queens endure chronic pressure over months and years with little room for error. Children are born into expectation immediately. Even newborns carry weight, symbolic and political. Sons are heralded as future kings, daughters as pawns in dynastic alliances. The queen's relationship with her offspring is shaped by duty, expectation, and the ever-present gaze of the court. Her ability to nurture, protect, and guide is constantly measured against both precedent and the ambitions of those around her. Maternal instincts must align with political necessity, often creating tension between personal desire and social expectation. Repeated pregnancies and the physical toll of childbirth shape the queen's life in profound ways. Her body bears the marks of endurance, yet each pregnancy comes with increased risk. Miscarriages, complications, and illness threaten both health and position. The queen must negotiate these realities with courage, resilience, and strategic awareness, balancing the physical demands of reproduction with the political demands of visibility and influence. Prehistoric humans faced physical danger daily. Medieval queens confront danger within their own bodies, amplified by societal expectation. The psychological burden is immense. Pressure from the king, advisors, and court, coupled with personal fear and physical strain, creates a relentless cycle of stress. The queen must maintain composure, exhibit authority, and manage public perception while navigating deeply personal challenges. Emotional resilience becomes a survival skill as critical as intelligence, diplomacy, or social awareness. The capacity to endure, adapt, and continue performing under pressure defines the queen's effectiveness and safety. Every decision, every action, every moment of attention is scrutinized. Diet, activity, interactions, and demeanor are constantly evaluated for their influence on fertility and performance. Even minor deviations from expectation are noted, interpreted, and remembered, forming a continuous cycle of pressure. The queen exists under an unyielding lens, where personal autonomy is subordinated to dynastic responsibility, and her body is inseparable from her political identity. The queen's relationship with the king is central yet complicated. Favor, affection, and intimacy influence perception and political leverage. The queen's success or failure in producing heirs affects the dynamics of power, negotiation, and influence within the court. Each pregnancy alters alliances, expectations, and social positioning, demonstrating that personal and political spheres are inseparable. Prehistoric survival demanded skill and cooperation. Medieval queens must survive complex social ecosystems under relentless pressure. Even in private moments, the queen's mind is occupied. Planning, anticipation, and concern for both self and dynasty occupy thoughts constantly. Rest is limited. as anxiety about conception, health, and court perception lingers. Leisure, if it exists, is curtailed by the need for vigilance, preparation, and endurance. The queen's autonomy is restricted, her identity intertwined with both expectation and duty. By nightfall, the queen reflects on another day dominated by expectation. Every movement, thought, and decision has been influenced by the weight of producing an heir, sustaining her position, and navigating a court rife with scrutiny and intrigue. The physical, emotional, and political pressures are unrelenting, shaping every aspect of life, limiting personal freedom, and demanding extraordinary resilience. Survival is measured not in conquest or battle, but in endurance, strategic awareness, and the ability to balance personal need with the relentless demands of duty. The day begins long before the sun fully rises, with the first light seeping through narrow windows into chambers that feel both grand and confining. As a medieval queen, your waking moments are already dictated by duty. The ritual of preparing for the day is meticulous and exhaustive. Hair arranged, gowns layered, jewelry chosen with precision, and every gesture planned to convey authority, grace, and composure. These preparations are not mere vanity. They are essential signals to courtiers, ambassadors, and the king himself. Appearances are a weapon, a shield, and a constant test, as every flaw or lapse is immediately noticed, recorded, and remembered. Breakfast is a formal performance. The table is set with precision, attendants stand by to serve and observe, and courtiers watch your demeanor as closely as your diet. Every bite, every sip, every movement is evaluated for poise, restraint, and refinement. Even mundane acts are laden with symbolic meaning. Spilling a drink, faltering in posture, or showing visible fatigue can invite subtle ridicule or damage your standing. The queen's very existence is public, performed under the scrutiny of the palace, and her survival within this social ecosystem depends on maintaining impeccable composure at all times. Morning audiences demand attentiveness and intellect. Petitioners, nobles, and envoys arrive to present concerns, requests, or gifts. The queen must listen carefully, respond wisely, and assert authority without overstepping bounds. Political acumen is required, as the smallest misjudgment can ripple through alliances, inspire jealousy, or weaken influence. Prehistoric survival demanded skill and instinct. Medieval queens require constant vigilance, intellectual engagement, and subtle strategic thinking to navigate a web of expectations. Maintaining appearances extends beyond formal gatherings. Walking through the palace, interacting with staff, or even standing at a window to watch the gardens are all observed actions. Every smile, frown, or expression is interpreted, often amplified by rumor and gossip. Courtiers, attendants, and advisors all watch for weakness, inconsistency, or signs of favoritism. The queen must internalize a performance that never ceases, where authenticity is secondary to the expectations and perceptions of those around her. Ceremonial duties dominate the day. Public prayers, processions, or ritual observances require precise timing, posture, and behavior. Participation is mandatory and highly scrutinized. Failure to follow the proper protocol can lead to embarrassment, scandal, or loss of influence. Even in acts of devotion, the queen's performance conveys political and social meaning. Her visible piety, composure, and attention to ritual reinforce authority, while lapses can be weaponized by rivals. Prehistoric survival required endurance and strength. The medieval queen's endurance is measured in social acumen and ceremonial precision. Every interaction at court is a strategic exercise. Conversations with advisors, nobles, or even servants must be carefully calibrated. Words are weighed for meaning, tone, and implication. Silence is equally potent. What is not said can influence perception as strongly as spoken statements. Gossip spreads quickly, alliances shift subtly, and power dynamics are constantly renegotiated. The queen navigates these interactions with awareness, diplomacy, and strategic foresight, understanding that her reputation, influence, and safety are inextricably tied to perception. Education and cultural refinement are both privileges and burdens. A queen is expected to be literate, knowledgeable, and artistically accomplished. Reading letters, reviewing reports, or appreciating music and art are part of daily responsibilities. Yet, this intellectual engagement comes with expectations. The queen must demonstrate wisdom, tact, and cultural sophistication at all times. Prehistoric survival relied on immediate skills and instinct. Medieval queens are constantly evaluated on intellect, taste, and the ability to perform culturally sophisticated roles. Attending to the household is an ongoing duty. The queen oversees a complex network of servants, attendants, and officials, each with responsibilities, ambitions, and personalities. Conflicts among staff, lapses in performance, or even perceived disrespect require careful management. The queen balances authority with diplomacy, ensuring that daily operations run smoothly while simultaneously maintaining loyalty, influence, and social cohesion. The palace is a living organism, and the queen is both its central figure and a constant problem solver, navigating a system where small errors can have large repercussions. Meals, beyond breakfast, continue to be performances of composure and refinement. Luncheon and dinner are opportunities for political observation and influence. Guests, courtiers, and even visiting dignitaries are evaluated and interacted with carefully. Choices of conversation, posture, and gesture are all part of signaling intelligence, tact, and status. Food itself carries symbolic meaning, and the queen's handling of it demonstrates discipline, cultural knowledge, and decorum. Mistakes, missteps, or lapses in awareness are rarely forgiven. Wardrobe and presentation demand continuous attention. Gowns, jewelry, and adornments must convey status, taste, and adherence to courtly fashion. Improper attire, colors, or accessories can signal misalignment with tradition or political expectation. The physical demands of these elaborate ensembles are considerable. Heavy fabrics, layered garments, and restrictive corsetry limit mobility, require constant adjustment, and produce discomfort. Survival in this environment is not physical, but social, requiring endurance, planning, and constant attention to detail. The queen's relationship with the king continues to influence daily life. Favor, access, and intimacy must be managed strategically, balancing personal inclination with duty, perception, and political consequence. Misreading intentions or neglecting expectations can undermine influence or spark rivalries. Even small gestures, subtle comments, or nuances of behavior are interpreted for meaning. The queen's ability to maintain favor, negotiate access, and manage perception is essential for both personal and political survival. Travel and movement within the palace require vigilance, whether passing through corridors, entering chambers, or attending ceremonial spaces. The queen is observed constantly. Courtiers position themselves strategically, seeking proximity, favor, or opportunity. Misjudgment of path, presence, or timing can result in offense, gossip, or diminished influence. Prehistoric survival relied on observation and responsiveness. The queen must navigate complex social terrain with the same constant awareness. Afternoon audiences often involve disputes, petitions, or ceremonial obligations. Resolving conflicts, negotiating outcomes, or mediating disputes is part of maintaining authority. Afternoon audiences often involve disputes, petitions, or ceremonial obligations. Resolving conflicts, negotiating outcomes, or mediating disputes is part of maintaining authority. Each decision is scrutinized, interpreted, and remembered. Prehistoric humans learned from immediate outcomes. The queen must consider long-term consequences, perception, and political ramifications in every interaction. Influence is maintained through careful judgment, strategic engagement, and consistent vigilance. Even leisure is governed by expectation. Music, reading, or games are conducted under observation, ensuring that every action aligns with social norms, political strategy, and ceremonial propriety. Humor must be calibrated. Informal conversation can be interpreted as satire or dissent. Personal enjoyment is subordinate to performance, as the queen must embody refinement, intelligence, and decorum at all times. Evening rituals continue, often extending into private or semi-private reflection. The queen reviews the day's interactions, decisions, and observations, assessing outcomes and planning for the future. Attention to detail, awareness of shifting alliances, and understanding of perception are integrated into ongoing strategy. Prehistoric survival required continuous awareness of physical danger. Medieval survival requires continuous awareness of social, political, and cultural pressures. By nightfall, the queen has endured another day of public performance, political observation, and personal endurance. Every movement, word, and gesture has been calculated to maintain influence, safety, and reputation. Sleep, when it arrives, is tempered by anticipation, responsibility, and the knowledge that tomorrow will demand the same relentless attention to duty, appearance, and strategic navigation. Life as a medieval queen is a continuous performance, where survival, authority, and influence are measured in perception, endurance, and the capacity to balance countless obligations simultaneously. The day begins with a sense of tension that never fully dissipates as the queen navigates the complex web of the king's court. Every room, hallway, and gathering space carries the weight of observation, speculation, and subtle maneuvering. Courtiers, nobles, and advisors operate like a carefully calibrated network of spies and influencers, each assessing the queen for loyalty, intelligence, and potential threat. In this environment, influence is not granted by title alone. It must be earned, maintained, and defended with constant vigilance. Managing the king's court is a delicate exercise in diplomacy and strategy. Alliances shift subtly, often without warning, and loyalty is rarely absolute. Courtiers compete for favor, attempting to secure influence over the monarch and, indirectly, over the queen herself. Every interaction is layered with meaning. A smile, a gesture, or a comment can be interpreted as approval, disapproval, or even challenge. Misreading these signals can weaken authority, diminish reputation, or invite subtle sabotage. Survival in the court demands constant attention, patience, and strategic foresight. The queen must continually balance personal influence with political prudence. Supporting a noble too openly can provoke jealousy among others. Ignoring a petitioner may result in whispers or resentment. Every act, no matter how small, carries consequences. Prehistoric survival demanded immediate skill and reaction. Medieval queens must survive the slow, intricate calculations of human ambition and perception. Influence is not simply exercised, it is carefully cultivated, defended, and adapted. Daily life in the court involves constant observation. The queen is monitored by attendants, allies, and rivals alike. Meetings, ceremonies, and even casual walks are opportunities for scrutiny. Fashion, posture, and speech are all interpreted for political meaning, with missteps potentially magnified into scandal. Survival relies on the ability to perform flawlessly while remaining alert to shifting dynamics. Every encounter is both a test and a negotiation, requiring intelligence, tact, and endurance. Managing the king's interactions is another challenge. The queen often acts as an intermediary, counselor, and advisor, helping to interpret the intentions of courtiers, foreign dignitaries, and local officials. She must weigh advice, discern true intentions, and communicate subtly. Misjudging the king's mood, priorities, or perception can result in conflict, loss of influence, or diminished authority. This requires a combination of political acumen, emotional intelligence, and strategic thinking that is both exhausting and constant. The queen must also mediate disputes within the court. Rivalries between nobles, disagreements among advisors, and tensions within the household often require delicate handling. Solutions must satisfy multiple parties while reinforcing the queen's authority and maintaining balance within the court. Mismanagement can escalate conflicts, invite opposition, or destabilize alliances. Every action is calculated, with long-term consequences considered alongside immediate outcomes. Prehistoric survival required physical skill. Medieval survival relies on social intelligence, strategic awareness, and resilience. Ceremonial obligations are inseparable from political management. Public appearances, feasts, and religious rituals serve both symbolic and practical purposes. They reinforce hierarchy, signal favor, and communicate alliances. Participation must be precise, as deviations are noticed and interpreted. These events also provide opportunities for observation and influence, allowing the queen to assess intentions, gauge loyalty, and subtly manipulate relationships. Each ceremony is both a performance and a strategic exercise. The queen's influence extends to patronage and cultural engagement. Supporting artists, scholars, or religious institutions demonstrates sophistication, power, and strategic awareness. Choices in patronage reflect judgment, taste, and political alignment, influencing perception both within the court and beyond. Prehistoric humans relied on immediate skills to survive. Medieval queens leveraged cultural, intellectual, and social influence to maintain authority and protect position. Daily correspondence adds another layer of responsibility. Letters, petitions, and reports from distant territories arrive regularly, requiring review, judgment, and response. Miscommunication can have political ramifications, strain alliances, or invite misinterpretation. The queen must balance personal insight with diplomatic prudence, weighing advice from attendants, advisors, and the monarch while maintaining strategic oversight. Each decision has the potential to influence the court and the kingdom. Even mundane activities are politically charged. Dining, dressing, or walking through the palace are all observed and interpreted. The queen must navigate every action with attention to decorum, status, and influence. Missteps, whether perceived or real, can be used as leverage by rivals, creating subtle pressure that never truly abates. Survival relies not only on intelligence and strategy, but also on the continuous management of perception and relationships. Managing the household remains a constant task. Staff, attendants, and minor officials are all part of a delicate ecosystem where loyalty, competence, and ambition intersect. Disputes, mistakes, and rivalries among staff must be resolved strategically, maintaining authority while avoiding alienation. A queen's influence in this area reinforces both social stability and personal power, highlighting her central role in orchestrating the daily operations of the court. The queen's personal relationships are equally complex. Alliances with siblings, children, and extended family carry both opportunity and risk. Favors extended, gifts given, and alliances nurtured within the family affect social positioning, influence, and political leverage. Misjudging intentions or mismanaging relationships can weaken the queen's position, invite gossip, or alter the balance of power. Survival is measured in awareness, subtlety, and the capacity to negotiate both personal and political dynamics simultaneously. The king's perception is a constant concern. Favor, trust, and attention must be cultivated continuously. Demonstrating competence, intelligence, and loyalty strengthens influence, while errors or perceived failures may be exploited by rivals. Every conversation, gesture, or act is evaluated for its impact on the queen's standing with the monarch. Prehistoric survival relied on immediate reaction. Medieval survival requires continuous calibration of influence, perception, and strategic behavior. Conflict, both overt and subtle, is inevitable. Courtiers test limits. Rivalries emerge, and ambitions intersect. The queen must navigate these tensions with skill, patience, and prudence. Decisions carry long-term consequences, affecting alliances, reputation, and security. Even small gestures are interpreted for meaning, requiring constant awareness and adaptive strategy. Survival is a continuous exercise in observation, judgment, and calculated action. By evening, the queen reflects on the day's interactions and decisions. Each encounter, conversation, and observation is analyzed for insight, influence, and opportunity. The court is a living, shifting entity, requiring constant engagement, adaptation, and vigilance. The queen's ability to survive and thrive depends on the careful orchestration of perception, influence, and strategic behavior, ensuring that authority, reputation, and safety are maintained despite the relentless pressures of the royal household. The queen's life in the court is a continuous balancing act. She manages relationships, mediates conflicts, performs ceremonially, and exercises influence, all under the constant gaze of courtiers, advisors, and the king. The pressures are unending, and the consequences of missteps are magnified by the interconnectedness of social, political, and personal spheres. Survival, authority, and influence are earned daily, maintained through skillful observation, strategic action, and unwavering endurance. Even as the castle quiets, the queen remains alert. The lessons of the day, alliances tested, whispers noted, gestures interpreted, inform strategy for tomorrow. The court never truly sleeps, and the queen's awareness and influence must be maintained continuously. In this environment, power is both a privilege and a burden, a constant negotiation between authority, expectation, and survival. The queen's endurance, intelligence, and capacity to navigate complex social networks define her effectiveness, her safety, and her legacy. The morning light barely penetrates the heavy curtains when whispers begin to ripple through the castle. As a medieval queen, you quickly learn that rivalry and betrayal are not occasional hazards, they are constant companions. Every noble, every advisor, and sometimes even those closest to you, operate with ambition, calculation, and concealed agendas. No alliance is permanent, no loyalty guaranteed, and every gesture of friendship carries the potential for subtle treachery. Survival in this environment requires acute awareness, patience, and an almost instinctive ability to read intentions. Court life is a battlefield of perception. Alliances shift like sand, and today's ally may become tomorrow's rival. A compliment delivered in jest, a misremembered protocol, or a slightly delayed response can be interpreted as disrespect, weakness, or dissent. The queen must navigate this landscape with both caution and decisiveness, understanding that political missteps, even minor ones, can be exploited with devastating effect. Prehistoric survival relied on immediate physical skills. Medieval queens rely on intelligence, observation, and the ability to anticipate and counter subtle social maneuvers. Rivalry can appear in the most mundane forms. A noblewoman's carefully timed smile during a public audience may be a signal to another court faction. A steward's misfiled documents may not be accidental. Even servants may serve as conduits of information, intentionally or unknowingly conveying tidbits that alter perception, incite suspicion, or sow discord. The queen must constantly decipher these signals, separating genuine concern from manipulation, friend from adversary, and truth from rumor. Every day is a puzzle in which miscalculation can erode power and influence. Betrayal often arrives cloaked in opportunity. Courtiers who once appeared loyal may exploit circumstances to undermine the queen, presenting themselves as indispensable while quietly destabilizing alliances. Letters, gifts, and counsel are not always what they seem. Motives are layered, and actions must be interpreted within a complex social and political framework. Even the king's favor is not absolute, as influence can shift with changing needs, perceptions, or advice from others. The queen's ability to anticipate threats and act strategically is essential for survival. The court thrives on rumor. Whispers spread quickly, gaining volume and distortion as they pass from hand to hand. A story that begins as a trivial observation can evolve into a damaging narrative, questioning competence, loyalty, or character. The Queen's task is to manage these narratives, responding with discretion, strategic silence, or subtle intervention. Mismanagement can lead to social isolation, diminished influence, or direct political attacks. Prehistoric survival required keen observation of physical danger. Medieval queens must interpret and manage social danger with equal skill and vigilance. Political maneuvering is relentless. Nobles and advisors engage in calculated actions to secure power, influence decisions, and protect personal ambition. Their success often depends on the Queen's perception of events, meaning that she must remain several steps ahead at all times. Anticipating potential betrayals, countering manipulative tactics, and leveraging influence require a combination of intellect, patience, and resilience. Every decision, whether overt or subtle, carries consequences that can ripple across the court and shape the future of the kingdom. Rival factions frequently compete for influence over the king. Courtiers seek to shape decisions, policy, and perception, often presenting themselves as indispensable intermediaries. The Queen must navigate these factions carefully, supporting allies while countering threats, managing both appearances and outcomes. Prehistoric humans faced threats directly and immediately. The medieval queen faces dangers hidden in conversation, gestures, and perception, requiring a continuous balance of vigilance and diplomacy. Betrayal is not always obvious. A trusted advisor may subtly mislead, misrepresent, or withhold information to weaken the Queen's position. Allies may appear supportive while quietly aligning with opposition. Even family members can participate in intrigue, as dynastic ambition overrides personal loyalty. Detecting these threats requires careful attention to language, gesture, and circumstance. Observation is constant, interpretation ongoing, and action carefully measured to avoid unnecessary conflict while preserving authority. Ceremonial duties, while seemingly benign, are often stages for rivalry. Seating arrangements, honors granted, or public acknowledgments are scrutinized for hidden meaning. A misinterpreted gesture may spark offense or shift perception, providing an opening for rivals. The Queen must perform these rituals with precision, understanding that appearances are as significant as actions. Prehistoric survival relied on physical skill. Medieval survival is a mental and social exercise, requiring constant awareness of subtle hierarchies and signals. Interpersonal skill becomes a survival tool. The Queen must navigate delicate conversations, mediate conflicts, and balance competing interests. Negotiation and persuasion are daily necessities, as missteps can have lasting consequences. Maintaining authority requires patience, insight, and strategic calculation, all while projecting composure, fairness, and wisdom. Failure to balance these elements may erode influence, embolden rivals, or create lasting vulnerabilities. The king's perception is paramount. A courtier's betrayal may go unnoticed, but misjudging the king's reaction can have immediate consequences. Favor can shift quickly, altering alliances and access. The Queen must maintain constant awareness of the king's mood, priorities, and perceptions, adapting strategy and communication accordingly. Prehistoric survival was direct and tangible. Medieval queens survive in a realm of perception, influence, and strategy. Political danger can manifest in sudden crises. A rumor may gain traction, a disagreement may escalate, or a faction may challenge authority. The queen must respond promptly, yet carefully, balancing visibility with subtlety. Strategies range from public demonstration of authority to discreet intervention behind the scenes. Every response carries risk, and the queen's ability to measure impact is critical to preserving safety and influence. Even leisure and private moments are not free from danger. Courtiers observe, letters are intercepted, and actions interpreted. The queen's autonomy is constantly constrained by the need to maintain vigilance, assess alliances, and anticipate threats. Trust is rare, and every interaction carries potential consequence. Prehistoric survival required immediate action. The medieval queen's survival requires constant strategic awareness and foresight. The psychological toll is immense. Fear, stress, and vigilance are constant companions. The queen must manage her own emotions while projecting composure, strength, and authority. Mental endurance becomes as important as physical endurance, as the pressures of betrayal, rivalry, and political danger are unrelenting. Emotional resilience is required not only for personal survival, but also for maintaining influence and authority. By nightfall, the queen has endured another day of observation, negotiation, and subtle confrontation. Every gesture, every conversation, and every decision has been analyzed and considered for both immediate and long-term consequences. Courtiers continue to shift alliances, rivals continue to plot, and the court remains a living, breathing network of ambition and intrigue. The queen's survival depends on continuous awareness, strategic thinking, and the ability to navigate complex social networks with skill and precision. In this world, trust is provisional, and loyalty is conditional. Every interaction is a potential threat or opportunity, and the queen must remain vigilant at all times. Political danger, subtle betrayal, and personal rivalry define the landscape of court life, demanding constant adaptation, intelligence, and resilience. Survival, authority, and influence are never guaranteed. They are earned daily through observation, strategy, and careful action. The castle quiets, but the queen remains alert, reflecting on the lessons of the day. Subtle betrayals, shifting alliances, and potential threats inform strategies for tomorrow. The court never truly rests, and her vigilance cannot waver. Prehistoric survival depended on immediate skill. The medieval queen's survival depends on endurance, awareness, and the continuous management of perception, influence, and authority. The first light of day barely touches the stone walls before the queen is already aware that the castle itself is alive with whispers. As a medieval queen, public opinion is both a weapon and a cage, shaping every action, word, and gesture. Courtiers, visitors, and even distant observers form judgments that can enhance influence or erode authority. The queen's survival and effectiveness hinge on her ability to understand, anticipate, and manipulate these perceptions, often while balancing her own desires, duties, and vulnerabilities. Public opinion is never static. Today's praise can become tomorrow's criticism, often amplified by rumor or misinterpretation. The queen must manage appearances continuously, ensuring that every visible action communicates competence, decorum, and authority. Missteps, even trivial, can be magnified, becoming the seed of gossip or criticism. She learns quickly that perception is as powerful as any political maneuver, and the court thrives on attention to every nuance of behavior. Rumors are a constant force. A minor incident, an overheard conversation, a misunderstood gesture, or a delayed response can spread rapidly, transforming into a damaging narrative. Courtiers may exploit these narratives to their advantage, subtly undermining the queen's position. Even when intentions are benign, perception can be manipulated, requiring the queen to respond with tact, discretion, and strategic foresight. Prehistoric survival depended on immediate threats. Medieval queens navigate a realm where danger is social, psychological, and often invisible. The queen's actions are always under scrutiny. Attending a religious service, participating in a feast, or even walking in the gardens is observed by both supporters and detractors. Clothing, posture, and speech are interpreted for meaning, signaling refinement, strength, or potential weakness. Every element of presentation contributes to the story being told about her, shaping alliances, influence, and reputation. Survival depends not only on competence, but also on perception management, often requiring extraordinary attention to detail. Balancing visibility and discretion is an ongoing challenge. The queen must appear approachable, benevolent, and wise while guarding personal and political interests. Overexposure can invite scrutiny, criticism, or misinterpretation, while excessive seclusion may suggest weakness, aloofness, or instability. Strategic engagement becomes a careful dance, where every interaction is weighed for both immediate and long-term impact. Misjudging this balance can erode authority or open avenues for rivals to exploit. Influence extends beyond the immediate court. News travels through networks of nobles, allies, and distant kingdoms. A queen's reputation reaches beyond the palace walls, affecting alliances, negotiations, and political standing. Managing this broader perception requires awareness of communication channels, cultural expectations, and strategic messaging. Prehistoric survival relied on understanding immediate surroundings. Medieval queens must navigate both local and distant social landscapes with equal vigilance. The queen's engagement with the populace is equally delicate. Observing festivals, distributing favors, or participating in ceremonies shapes the perception of the royal household. Generosity must be balanced with prudence, displays of piety with authenticity, and visibility with discretion. Every action contributes to a narrative that will be analyzed, repeated, and remembered, often beyond the queen's direct control. Misalignment between intention and perception can create lasting challenges to authority and influence. Ceremonial presence is another critical tool for managing opinion. Rituals, feasts, and public events offer opportunities to signal strength, diplomacy, and refinement. Participation must be precise. Missteps, whether in behavior, dress, or timing, can be interpreted as incompetence or weakness. Conversely, effective performance can reinforce loyalty, respect, and influence, demonstrating the queen's mastery of both social and political expectations. The queen's personal conduct is inseparable from political consequence. Words spoken in private can echo through the court if overheard, misinterpreted, or reported. Expressions of frustration, concern, or fatigue must be carefully managed, as they may be perceived as vulnerability or indecision. Emotional resilience becomes a critical skill, as public opinion often amplifies minor lapses into challenges that must be addressed strategically. Conflict management is intertwined with perception. Disputes among courtiers, misunderstandings with the king, or tensions within the household all affect how the queen is viewed. Resolution requires careful calculation, balancing fairness, diplomacy, and demonstration of authority. Even when the queen acts judiciously, perception can distort outcomes, requiring additional management, explanation, or subtle correction. Prehistoric survival depended on immediate skill. Medieval queens survive in a constant negotiation of image, influence, and social power. Patronage and cultural engagement influence perception as well. Supporting artists, scholars, and religious institutions communicates refinement, intellect, and political alignment. Decisions in this area are scrutinized for taste, judgment, and strategic intent. A misjudged choice may be used to question competence or distract from political objectives, while a well-timed engagement can reinforce reputation and influence. The Queen's awareness of perception extends beyond immediate interactions to long-term narrative shaping. Even daily habits affect opinion. Eating, walking, conversing, or interacting with staff are all observed and interpreted. Clothing, posture, and speech contribute to a constantly evolving narrative. Small errors can accumulate, forming a perception that may be difficult to correct. The Queen's life is a continuous exercise in performance, where awareness of observation and potential consequences governs behavior at every moment. Trust is both essential and fragile. Allies and attendants are evaluated continuously, as perception may be influenced by their behavior as much as by the Queen's own actions. Misplaced trust can be exploited, while overly cautious interactions may be perceived as aloofness. Balancing openness with vigilance requires constant judgment, awareness, and strategic action. Survival depends on navigating relationships skillfully while maintaining control over reputation and influence. The Queen's relationship with the King heavily influences public opinion. Favor, attention, and proximity affect perception, and even minor changes in the monarch's behavior can ripple through the court. The Queen must remain aware of these dynamics, interpreting signals and adjusting behavior accordingly. Maintaining favor requires subtle negotiation, awareness, and adaptability, as the King's preferences and priorities may shift with little warning. Even private reflections are shaped by the pressures of public perception. The Queen must continually evaluate actions, interactions, and outcomes, considering both immediate impact and long-term reputation. Decisions must be informed by awareness of social, political, and cultural expectations, as well as the potential for misinterpretation or rumor. Prehistoric survival relied on immediate threat assessment. Medieval queens must anticipate and influence perception over time. By evening, the Queen assesses the day's successes and challenges. Public opinion has been managed through careful performance, strategic action, and nuanced communication. Allies have been reinforced, rivalries monitored, and reputation maintained, yet vigilance cannot wane. Perception is fluid, and tomorrow will bring new challenges, scrutiny, and opportunities for influence. Survival, authority, and influence are sustained only through continuous awareness, adaptability, and strategic engagement. The castle grows quiet, yet the queen remains mentally alert. Every interaction, rumor, and observation informs strategy for maintaining influence and authority. Public opinion is a living entity, shifting with every conversation, event, and observation. The queen's ability to survive and thrive depends on her skill in navigating this fluid landscape, balancing visibility, discretion, and influence to preserve power, reputation, and personal safety. In this environment, perception is as important as reality. Reputation can be built or destroyed with subtle gestures, careful attention, and strategic engagement. Every action is a potential signal, every interaction an opportunity or risk. The queen's life is defined by the need to manage both image and influence continuously, ensuring that authority is maintained and threats are mitigated through awareness, calculation, and adaptability. By the end of the day, the queen has survived yet another complex network of observation, rumor, and expectation. Her authority has been reinforced, her influence maintained, and her vigilance exercised. The pressures of public opinion remain, unyielding and constant, a reminder that in the life of a medieval queen, survival is not merely physical, it is a continuous, demanding exercise in perception, strategy, and resilience. The day begins with the tolling of the chapel bells, a sound that serves as both call and reminder. As a medieval queen, religious duty is woven into every aspect of life, shaping behavior, appearances, and decisions. Attendance at prayers, participation in ritual, and adherence to the Church's expectations are not optional. They are public demonstrations of faith, devotion, and legitimacy. The Queen's position requires visible piety, careful observance of ritual, and a constant awareness that her spiritual conduct reflects on her authority, influence, and even the stability of the kingdom. Ceremonial obligation dominates the morning. The Queen must attend Mass, observe prescribed prayers, and follow strict protocols for posture, gesture, and attire. Every movement, every word, every expression is scrutinized. Courtiers, clergy, and visitors are all observers, assessing sincerity, devotion, and decorum. A slight misstep, a momentary lapse in posture, a mispronounced word, or a perceived distraction can be interpreted as irreverence or weakness. Prehistoric survival relied on immediate physical skill. Medieval queens survive through mastery of ritual, disciplined behavior, and constant awareness of observation. Religious festivals and processions amplify this pressure. Public ceremonies are elaborate, highly symbolic, and conducted with meticulous attention to tradition. The Queen participates as both a figurehead and an active participant, demonstrating her alignment with the faith and the moral authority of the monarchy. Seating, attire, and timing are all highly regulated, and deviation can invite public censure or whispered criticism. These events are not only spiritual obligations, but also political tools, signaling power, legitimacy, and alliances. The Queen's role in religious life extends beyond attendance. She acts as patron of churches, monasteries, and religious institutions, allocating resources, granting favors, and supporting construction or charitable works. These acts communicate piety, influence, and social responsibility, reinforcing both authority and public perception. Misjudged actions or inappropriate displays can spark scandal or erode credibility, emphasizing the constant need for prudence, awareness, and strategic decision-making. Daily prayers and private devotions, though seemingly personal, are equally laden with expectation. Even moments of solitude are observed by attendants, who ensure the Queen's actions meet standards of decorum. These rituals are not simply spiritual, they are social performances, demonstrating discipline, devotion, and alignment with the Church's authority. The Queen must navigate these practices with sincerity while remaining mindful of the potential for misinterpretation or judgment. Religious advice and counsel create another layer of complexity. Clergy may provide guidance on moral decisions, political actions, or personal behavior, often with an undercurrent of influence. The Queen must weigh advice carefully, balancing spiritual insight, political strategy, and personal judgment. Accepting counsel without question can be exploited, while dismissing guidance may be interpreted as arrogance or irreverence. Navigating these dynamics requires discernment, tact, and strategic awareness. Fasting, dietary restrictions, and ritual observance add physical demands to daily responsibilities. Participation in these practices signals devotion, discipline, and respect for spiritual authority. Yet the physical discomfort is compounded by social observation, as attendants and courtiers evaluate compliance and sincerity. Survival in this context is a blend of mental endurance, social awareness, and personal discipline, with every act scrutinized for meaning, adherence, and impact on perception. Religious obligations intersect with ceremonial duties, creating complex performance expectations. Attending Mass, lighting candles, or participating in sacraments requires careful coordination with the court schedule, personal responsibilities, and political engagements. Timing, posture, and presentation are critical, as even minor lapses can be noted, interpreted, and remembered. The Queen's life is a continuous balancing act, integrating faith, authority, and perception into every interaction and action. Rituals extend into the management of the household and courtiers. The Queen ensures that attendants, staff, and officials observe religious protocols correctly, reinforcing discipline and demonstrating leadership. Her own conduct sets the standard, influencing behavior, expectation, and perception throughout the palace. Deviations, whether minor or significant, require careful correction to maintain both spiritual and social authority. Prehistoric survival demanded vigilance and skill. Medieval queens must maintain constant spiritual, social, and political awareness. Charitable acts form another crucial aspect of religious duty. The Queen distributes alms, supports hospitals, and funds religious initiatives, signaling piety and moral responsibility. These acts enhance public perception, strengthen alliances, and demonstrate ethical leadership. Yet every action is interpreted, and misalignment between intention and reception can spark criticism, questioning, or diminished influence. Survival requires continuous evaluation, planning, and execution of acts that balance compassion, strategy, and social expectation. The Queen's influence over religious appointments further emphasizes the intersection of faith and politics. Supporting clergy, influencing church decisions, and guiding religious education extend her authority beyond ceremonial appearances. Misjudgments, favoritism, or overt manipulation can provoke backlash or undermine legitimacy, demanding careful strategy and awareness. Every choice carries potential consequence, reinforcing the continuous negotiation of perception, influence, and authority. Even private spiritual reflection is entwined with duty. Contemplation, meditation, and prayer are opportunities to prepare for political decisions, assess alliances, and consider strategy. Spiritual guidance informs judgment, providing insight into both personal conduct and broader political context. The Queen's ability to integrate faith with leadership is critical, shaping decisions that affect both perception and practical governance. Religious instruction of children and heirs also falls to the Queen, guiding moral education, faith practice, and ceremonial knowledge ensures continuity of both belief and authority. The Queen's influence in this sphere affects public perception, succession, and long-term legacy. Failing to instill proper discipline or demonstrating perceived neglect can undermine reputation and authority, highlighting the constant pressures that define her role. Festivals, holidays, and sacred observances extend beyond the palace, affecting towns, villages, and distant territories. The Queen's participation signals legitimacy, moral authority, and cultural alignment. Attendance, gestures, and communication during these events are meticulously evaluated, reinforcing her position or exposing vulnerabilities. Prehistoric survival required mastery of environment. Medieval queens must master perception, ritual, and public expectation. Evening rituals continue to demand attention. Lighting candles, attending vespers, or observing private devotions require precision and awareness. Courtiers remain present, observing compliance, posture, and demeanor. The Queen's ability to maintain composure and demonstrate devotion reinforces authority, signals stability, and influences both immediate and long-term perception. Spiritual performance is inseparable from social and political survival. By nightfall, the Queen reflects on a day dominated by ritual, ceremony, and strategic navigation of faith and authority. Every gesture, word, and action has contributed to perception, influence, and public reputation. The pressures of religious duty are unrelenting, as the Queen must balance sincerity, performance, and strategy simultaneously. Survival depends on continuous awareness, adaptability, and mastery of both spiritual and political expectations. Even in private moments, the Queen's vigilance remains. Reflection on alliances, observation of courtiers, and anticipation of future events shape her ongoing strategy. Religious duty, far from being merely personal devotion, is inseparable from authority, perception, and influence. The Queen's ability to navigate ceremonial pressures, maintain visible piety, and manage public perception is essential for survival, authority, and legacy. In this environment, faith and politics are intertwined. Every action communicates meaning, reinforces authority, and affects the stability of the court. Survival as a medieval queen requires discipline, intelligence, and strategic awareness, ensuring that spiritual and social obligations are met while maintaining power, influence, and perception. The challenges are relentless, the expectations unending, and the consequences of missteps potentially severe. By the end of the day, the Queen has survived yet another complex network of ritual, expectation, and observation. Her influence has been exercised, perception managed, and authority reinforced. Religious duty, ceremonial pressure, and social expectation are continuous, shaping her daily life and long-term strategy. The Queen's existence is defined by the integration of faith, performance, and strategic awareness, where survival is a blend of endurance, insight, and unceasing vigilance. The day begins with the subtle tension that only comes from living in a world where marriage is never just personal. It is political, strategic, and occasionally dangerous. As a medieval queen, the pressures of matrimony extend far beyond private companionship. Every interaction, conversation, and gesture within the marital relationship is scrutinized by courtiers, foreign dignitaries, and local subjects. The Queen's ability to navigate these expectations is essential, for marriage in the royal sphere is a tool of diplomacy, an instrument of alliance, and often a source of personal compromise. Marriage, in this context, is less about affection than about political advantage. The union of two houses, the consolidation of power, and the extension of influence drive decisions more than personal preference or emotional compatibility. The Queen's role is to embody these alliances, managing the expectations of both her own family and that of the king. Even minor disagreements or missteps may be interpreted as political instability, providing rivals with opportunities to challenge authority or shift perception. Prehistoric survival relied on immediate skill. Medieval queens survive in a landscape of negotiation, strategy, and perpetual observation. Diplomatic duties linked to marriage are constant. The Queen participates in meetings with foreign emissaries, coordinates with advisors, and provides counsel to the king regarding alliances and treaties. Her demeanor, words, and gestures are measured for both sincerity and effectiveness, as each interaction carries implications for political influence. A single perceived slight, error in protocol, or misinterpreted statement can ripple across kingdoms, affecting negotiations and long-term strategic objectives. The Queen's capacity to maintain composure, insight, and subtlety is critical. Every social gathering, feast, or audience is a stage upon which marital diplomacy is performed. Courtiers and visitors alike observe interactions, assessing harmony, authority, and power dynamics. The Queen's conduct influences not only perception of her personal character, but also interpretation of the alliance she represents. A polite nod, a careful phrase, or a subtle glance may communicate loyalty, prudence, or, conversely, dissatisfaction and weakness. Understanding these signals, both given and received, is central to maintaining influence. The Queen must often act as intermediary in conflicts arising from the marriage itself. Differences in opinion, policy, or strategy between her and the king may arise, requiring delicate negotiation. Public disagreement is hazardous. Private dissent must be expressed tactfully, if at all. Managing this balance between authenticity and prudence is an ongoing challenge, as the Queen must preserve both authority and alliance while maintaining personal safety and respect. Children, heirs, and succession add layers of responsibility and complexity. Producing heirs is a central expectation, and the Queen's ability to fulfill this role carries both personal and political weight. The health, education, and upbringing of royal children are not merely domestic matters. They directly affect the stability of dynasties, alliances, and kingdoms. The Queen must navigate societal, familial, and political pressures, ensuring that her offspring reflect favorably on her authority and ability to maintain alliances. Negotiation extends beyond immediate family. Noble houses, advisors, and distant rulers often involve themselves in marital politics, interpreting actions and words for their own advantage. The queen must manage these influences while maintaining her own strategic priorities. Missteps, favoritism, or perceived weakness can destabilize alliances, shift perception, and empower rivals. Survival in this context relies on constant awareness, foresight, and skillful diplomacy. The queen's personal relationship with the king is deeply intertwined with public expectation. Displays of affection, deference, or disagreement are interpreted through political and social lenses. Even private interactions are rarely free from scrutiny, as courtiers and attendants observe for signals, intentions, or opportunities to report perceived impropriety. Misinterpretation of behavior can have consequences for influence, favor, and the perception of authority. The queen must navigate these interactions with subtlety, ensuring that personal dynamics support political objectives. Marital diplomacy is further complicated by extended families. The ambitions of siblings, cousins, and in-laws affect decisions, interactions, and expectations. Alliances with these relatives may strengthen position, but rivalries or mismanagement can provoke conflict or undermine authority. The queen must balance loyalty, prudence, and strategic advantage, carefully considering the consequences of each interaction and choice. Prehistoric survival required physical skill. Medieval queens survive through continuous social navigation, negotiation, and foresight. Courtly events, public appearances, and celebrations serve as platforms for marital diplomacy. The queen's participation communicates alignment, strength, and authority. Gestures, attire, and demeanor are carefully evaluated for both aesthetic and political meaning. Even minor lapses can spark criticism, rumors, or questions regarding competence or influence. The queen must maintain vigilance, poise, and strategic presence, demonstrating both personal authority and the stability of the marriage as a political instrument. Conflict management within the marriage can be subtle and complex. Disagreements over policy, alliances, or public decisions must be addressed with diplomacy, discretion, and tactical awareness. Public confrontation is dangerous, while private dissent requires careful communication. Maintaining authority and credibility requires balancing personal conviction with strategic restraint, ensuring that both perception and reality align with political goals. Negotiating expectations is continuous. The queen must manage her own ambitions, those of her family, and the ambitions of the king, courtiers, and advisors. Every decision, from charitable acts to ceremonial participation, is scrutinized for alignment with marital and political priorities. Misalignment can spark criticism, weaken alliances, or create opportunities for rivals to exploit. Survival, influence, and authority are sustained through careful observation, strategic action, and constant assessment of both immediate and long-term consequences. Even leisure moments carry political weight. Conversations, interactions, and gestures within gardens, halls, or private chambers are observed and interpreted. Trust is provisional, and relationships are continuously evaluated for loyalty, ambition, and potential leverage. The queen's ability to maintain composure, exercise discretion, and manage perception is critical to both personal and political survival. The queen's ability to influence the king indirectly impacts broader political decisions. Counsel, subtle suggestions, and strategic engagement shape policy, diplomacy, and alliances. Misjudging timing, tone, or context may reduce influence or provoke opposition. Maintaining credibility and authority requires continuous awareness, insight, and adaptability, ensuring that marital partnership supports both personal and dynastic objectives. Evenings are filled with reflection, planning, and assessment. The queen evaluates the day's interactions, noting shifts in perception, opportunities for influence, and potential threats. Alliances, rivalries, and obligations are continuously recalibrated, ensuring that both immediate and long-term objectives are supported. Survival, influence, and authority are maintained not through force alone, but through skillful management of relationships, perception, and strategic engagement. By the end of the day, the queen has navigated another complex web of expectations, alliances, and obligations. Marital duties, diplomatic negotiation, and political pressures intertwine, shaping every interaction and influencing perception. Success requires intelligence, foresight, and resilience, balancing personal desires with duty and strategy. Survival, influence, and authority are not static. They are earned daily through continuous vigilance, strategic action, and careful management of both perception and reality. In this environment, marriage is both a personal and political instrument. Every interaction communicates meaning, signals alliances, and shapes perception. The queen's ability to navigate these pressures determines both her influence and the stability of the kingdom. Survival requires patience, insight, and a constant awareness of shifting dynamics, ensuring that the royal marriage functions as a tool for diplomacy, authority, and legacy. Even as night falls, the queen reflects on the challenges of the day. Alliances have been managed, rivalries observed, and political influence exercised. The pressures of marital diplomacy are unrelenting, requiring continuous observation, careful decision-making, and strategic action. Success is measured not by personal satisfaction, but by the maintenance of authority, perception, and the delicate balance of power that defines life as a medieval queen. The castle never truly sleeps. Even when the corridors are quiet and the courtiers have retired, the machinery of court intrigue hums softly, unseen but persistent. As a medieval queen, navigating this hidden network of alliances, rivalries, and whispered schemes is as essential as attending to public duties. Secrets, manipulation, and carefully concealed plots define daily life. One misstep, one misplaced trust, and influence can evaporate overnight. Survival requires constant vigilance, intelligence, and a keen understanding of human nature. Intrigue begins with observation. Every conversation, gesture, and expression carries meaning. Courtiers exchange glances, convey subtle signals, and circulate rumors with practiced skill. The queen must decipher these cues, distinguishing between genuine advice, manipulation, and hidden agendas. Failure to interpret correctly can embolden rivals or weaken her position. In many ways, the castle functions as a living organism of social strategy, with the queen as both participant and analyst, constantly assessing, adjusting, and responding. Secrets are the currency of power. Information, selectively shared, can influence decisions, alter alliances, and destabilize enemies. The queen must learn to gather intelligence without being detected, to identify reliable sources, and to discern truth from deception. Attendants, advisors, and even visiting dignitaries may be conduits for information, sometimes inadvertently, sometimes with deliberate intent. In this environment, the queen's ability to read people and situations is as important as any ceremonial or political skill. Manipulation is inevitable. Allies may seek advantage through subtle persuasion or carefully placed suggestions. Rivals may plant rumors, exploit mistakes, or misrepresent events to weaken influence. Even family members can participate in intrigue, prioritizing personal or dynastic ambition over loyalty. The queen must navigate these forces carefully, maintaining relationships while protecting herself and her authority. Prehistoric survival depended on immediate physical skill. The medieval queen survives through strategy, observation, and foresight. The queen's daily schedule is intertwined with these hidden dynamics. Meetings, audiences, and ceremonies are often stages for maneuvering, where influence is exercised subtly and perception is carefully managed. A single word, nod, or expression may shift alliances or spark suspicion. The queen must balance visibility with discretion, ensuring that her actions support objectives without revealing vulnerabilities. The castle is a battlefield of perception, where appearances are as important as reality, and every participant has a stake in the ongoing struggle for power. Scandals are particularly dangerous. Even minor indiscretions, whether real or fabricated, can spread quickly and undermine authority. The queen must anticipate potential sources of scandal, control access to information, and act swiftly when threats emerge. Courtiers skilled in rumor can weaponize gossip to influence perception or advance personal agendas. Managing reputation, therefore, is not optional. It is a continuous strategic exercise requiring awareness, adaptability, and decisive action. All lies, too, can be instruments of intrigue. Support must be balanced with vigilance, as even trusted confidants may act out of self-interest. The queen must cultivate relationships carefully, providing guidance, rewards, or caution where necessary, while continuously evaluating loyalty and effectiveness. Misplaced trust can result in subtle sabotage, miscommunication, or political disadvantage. The queen's success depends on her ability to navigate these relationships with both discernment and tact. The queen must assess not only her own allies and rivals, but also the motivations, intentions, and loyalties of those closest to the monarch. Influence over policy, decisions, and alliances often depends on subtle persuasion, timely advice, or carefully presented information. Misjudgment can reduce influence or provoke subtle opposition, making strategic awareness a critical aspect of daily survival. The queen's influence is not static. It fluctuates with events, perception, and the shifting priorities of court factions. Wars, political decisions, religious obligations, and public ceremonies all create opportunities for influence, but also for risk. Maintaining control over perception and outcomes requires constant attention, analysis, and strategic planning. Survival is an ongoing exercise in adaptation, requiring intelligence, patience, and foresight. Intrigue often escalates in response to crises. Conflicts, disagreements, or rumors can quickly magnify, creating opportunities for rivals and threats to authority. The queen must act decisively, balancing public perception with private strategy. Solutions may involve negotiation, subtle redirection, or selective intervention, always considering both immediate and long-term consequences. Mismanagement can result in diminished influence, weakened alliances, or exposure to further plots. Information management is central. The queen must track events, conversations, and alliances while controlling the flow of information. Letters, messages, and verbal reports must be assessed for reliability, intent, and potential impact. Misinterpretation or misplaced trust can have cascading consequences, affecting both political and social stability. The queen's role becomes that of strategist, diplomat, and intelligence analyst simultaneously, navigating complex dynamics with precision and foresight. Rival factions operate continuously. Nobles, advisors, and courtiers compete for influence, status, and recognition, often exploiting the queen's decisions or actions to advance personal agendas. Understanding these dynamics requires constant observation and evaluation as alliances shift and loyalties evolve. The queen must anticipate moves, counter manipulations, and maintain awareness of the broader political landscape to sustain authority and influence. Scandals and secrets intersect with daily ceremonial obligations. Rituals, audiences, and public appearances are opportunities for manipulation, subtle influence, or the exploitation of vulnerabilities. The queen's mastery of protocol, presentation, and strategic timing allows her to maintain authority while minimizing exposure to risk. Even routine events can carry hidden implications, demanding continuous attention and assessment. Strategic patience is essential. Immediate reactions may exacerbate tension, reveal vulnerability, or trigger unintended consequences. The queen must weigh each decision carefully, considering both visible and hidden effects. Timing, discretion, and subtlety are as important as direct action, requiring a balance of intelligence, observation, and emotional resilience. Prehistoric survival relied on instinct. Medieval queens survived through calculation, awareness, and careful orchestration of influence. The queen's awareness extends to long-term reputation. Every interaction, observation, and decision contributes to a narrative that persists beyond immediate events. Missteps can reverberate for years, shaping perception and influencing future alliances. Vigilance, strategic foresight, and careful management of both visible and hidden dynamics ensure that the queen's authority endures despite the constant flux of court intrigue. By evening, the queen reflects on another day of careful navigation. Alliances have shifted subtly, threats have been assessed, and influence exercised with precision. Rumors have been addressed, secrets managed, and potential crises averted. Yet, vigilance remains imperative, as the court continues to operate on multiple levels, each carrying risk and opportunity. Survival, influence, and authority depend on perpetual awareness, adaptability, and strategic engagement. Even in moments of rest, the queen remains mentally alert. Observation, analysis, and planning continue, ensuring that she maintains control over perception, influence, and alliances. Court intrigue is relentless, requiring intelligence, patience, and resilience. Success is not defined by comfort or personal satisfaction, but by the maintenance of authority, the preservation of influence, and the careful management of both seen and unseen forces within the royal household. In this environment, secrecy and strategy are intertwined with daily life. Every word, gesture, and decision carries potential consequences. Survival requires a blend of observation, foresight, and discretion, with continuous adaptation to shifting circumstances. The Queen's ability to manage intrigue and scandal shapes not only her personal authority, but also the broader stability and influence of the monarchy itself. By nightfall, the Queen has survived another day in a world where secrecy, manipulation, and political calculation are constants. Her authority has been exercised, alliances maintained, and threats monitored. Court intrigue is unending, a reminder that survival as a medieval queen is not merely about physical safety. It is a continuous, demanding exercise in intelligence, awareness, and strategic action. The crown demands vigilance, resilience, and subtlety, and the Queen's mastery of these skills ensures both her survival and the preservation of her influence. As the castle quiets and night settles across the ramparts, the Queen sits alone in her chamber, reflecting on a life defined by constant observation, strategic decisions, and unrelenting expectations. For a medieval queen, survival was never merely about physical safety. It was about navigating a labyrinth of duties, obligations, and perception. The legacy of a queen was not measured in comfort or personal fulfillment, but in influence, reputation, and the enduring impact of her actions. Every choice, no matter how small, contributed to the narrative that history would remember. Legacy is shaped not only by triumphs, but also by endurance. The Queen's ability to maintain authority, manage alliances, and navigate political and social pressures ensured that her influence extended beyond immediate events. Every interaction, public appearance, and ceremonial duty reinforced her role in shaping the kingdom, its people, and even the succession of future monarchs. Prehistoric survival relied on immediate skill and instinct. Medieval queens survived and left a mark through strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, and the careful cultivation of perception. Influence is woven into every aspect of a queen's life. Through patronage, diplomacy, religious engagement, and ceremonial presence, she affects decisions, shapes culture, and directs the perception of her reign. Even private actions, observed by attendants, courtiers, or chroniclers, contribute to long-term narratives. The Queen's life is a constant interplay between the seen and the unseen, between immediate necessity and enduring consequence. Her ability to navigate this interplay determines the legacy she leaves behind. The weight of history is ever present. Chroniclers, scribes, and historians record events with varying degrees of accuracy, bias, and intention. The Queen must understand that her actions will be interpreted, celebrated, or criticized long after the moments have passed. Reputation is fragile, shaped as much by perception as by fact. The Queen's daily vigilance, political maneuvering, and strategic engagement are investments in a legacy that may be judged through distant eyes, often filtered by interpretation, rumor, and the agendas of those who document history. Ceremonial and public acts contribute to lasting influence. The Queen's participation in religious rites, festivals, and diplomatic events signals authority, piety, and alignment with cultural norms. Clothing, gestures, and speech are analyzed not only by contemporaries, but by future generations seeking insight into the character and competence of the monarchy. Every detail is an opportunity to reinforce or undermine perception, making the Queen's conscious management of appearances essential to enduring influence. Patronage leaves tangible marks on history. Supporting religious institutions, commissioning art, funding education, or overseeing construction projects allows the Queen to shape culture, values, and knowledge. These acts extend influence beyond the court and into the broader society, leaving legacies that can persist for centuries. Yet every act is also a performance. Choices are scrutinized, judged, and interpreted by both contemporaries and posterity. The Queen's strategic engagement ensures that patronage aligns with her desired legacy while reinforcing political and social objectives. Family and succession are central to a Queen's enduring impact. Raising heirs, ensuring the stability of dynastic lines, and guiding the moral and political education of children carry profound implications for the future. Success in these areas secures continuity of influence and preserves the authority of the monarchy. Failures, perceived or real, can have long-lasting consequences, weakening dynasties, altering alliances, or diminishing a queen's reputation. The stakes are not personal, they are dynastic, social, and historical. Political decisions, whether public or private, also shape legacy. Alliances formed, conflicts mediated, and policies influenced reflect the Queen's capacity for judgment, strategy, and leadership. Every choice is a thread in the larger tapestry of history, contributing to the perception of competence, wisdom, and authority. Missteps may be magnified over time, while skillful navigation of complex challenges enhances influence and secures recognition. Survival and legacy are intertwined, dependent on both immediate success and long-term interpretation. Religious observance and moral conduct are equally vital to enduring influence. Demonstrated piety, engagement with institutions, and adherence to ritual communicate stability, virtue, and alignment with societal expectations. The Queen's spiritual life is inseparable from her political and social role. Perception of virtue affects both contemporary authority and historical memory. Maintaining authenticity, discretion, and strategic visibility ensures that faith becomes a pillar of legacy rather than a source of vulnerability. Courtly management contributes to long-term impact. Navigating intrigue, maintaining alliances, and exercising authority over attendants, courtiers, and advisors ensures stability and reinforces influence. The Queen's ability to discern loyalty, anticipate challenges, and act decisively shapes both immediate outcomes and the historical narrative. Every relationship is a potential influence on perception, contributing to a legacy defined by skill, resilience, and strategic insight. Education, mentorship, and the cultivation of knowledge amplify enduring influence. The Queen's engagement with scholars, artists, and teachers shapes the intellectual and cultural life of the court. Decisions regarding access to knowledge, sponsorship of learning, and promotion of talent affect both the present and future, extending authority beyond her lifetime. Strategic engagement with intellectual and cultural spheres ensures that influence is both broad and lasting, creating a multi-dimensional legacy. Even private actions contribute to historical memory. Attentiveness, compassion, or discernment observed by attendants or chroniclers may become defining elements of a queen's reputation. Small acts, when recorded, interpreted, or remembered, can shape narratives of character, leadership, and influence. The queen must navigate every decision, balancing personal intention with public perception to ensure that legacy reflects competence, virtue, and authority. Challenges faced in life shape enduring influence as well. Conflict, intrigue, and adversity provide opportunities to demonstrate resilience, intelligence, and leadership. How the queen responds to crises affects contemporary perception and frames historical evaluation. Adaptability, courage, and strategic action define not only survival, but also the long-term interpretation of capability and legacy. Every trial becomes a potential illustration of skill, strength, or vulnerability, influencing how history remembers her reign. Memory and chronicling are selective and interpretive. The queen's actions may be amplified, diminished, or distorted over time, influenced by political agendas, societal biases, or changing cultural norms. Understanding this, the queen approaches legacy with both intention and caution, recognizing that influence persists not only through deeds, but through the stories told about them. Survival and authority are exercised in the present, while legacy is shaped in both immediate perception and historical record. Evening reflection highlights the cumulative nature of a queen's influence. Daily management of court, public duties, family, and ceremonial obligations forms a continuous thread, contributing to perception and reputation. Strategic foresight, awareness, and subtle guidance ensure that authority is preserved, alliances are maintained, and influence extends beyond immediate circumstances. The queen's legacy is constructed through consistent attention, careful action, and deliberate management of both seen and unseen forces. By nightfall, the queen recognizes the enormity of responsibility carried throughout life. Every decision, gesture, and action contributes to a narrative that will shape both contemporary perception and historical memory. Legacy is not inherited. It is earned through continuous vigilance, strategic engagement, and mastery of complex social, political, and ceremonial systems. Survival, influence, and enduring authority depend on the queen's ability to navigate these pressures with intelligence, foresight, and resilience. In conclusion, the life of a medieval queen is defined by the interplay between survival, authority, and legacy. Every day presents opportunities and challenges that influence perception, shape alliances, and contribute to historical memory. Success is measured not by comfort or ease, but by the capacity to maintain influence, navigate complex social networks, and leave a mark on both contemporaries and posterity. The crown demands vigilance, intelligence, and subtlety, ensuring that even as centuries pass, the queen's presence, decisions, and authority resonate through history. Legacy is enduring not because of grandeur or opulence alone, but because of skill, resilience, and strategic mastery. The queen's life demonstrates that survival in a medieval court required as much mental acuity, emotional intelligence, and strategic foresight as it did ceremonial grace or political authority. Every action, every interaction, and every decision contributes to a story that, centuries later, continues to define how history remembers her.